All right, we are recording. So Fred, you are able to kick off whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for being patient with us. And as Anthony said, at least we'll get us rolling here. So I know we have several applicants this evening. In the interest of time and the time we've already lost, hopefully everybody can try and follow our guidelines here. I think most of you have probably already presented in front of us, so you know the format of tonight. We'll introduce ourselves, ask that you all make a presentation, try to keep it to no more than 15 minutes at the most. And DPZ will have a staff presentation. The DAP will have questions and comments, and then we'll make motions if necessary and recommend as recommendations on your project. So I am Fred Marino, and I'm the chair, and I'm an architect. Let's turn it over to Dan.
Dan Levitt, civil engineer.
Okay, Vivian.
Hi, Vivian Stone, architect.
And Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry Quark. I'm a landscape architect.
I guess Anthony and Nick.
Hi, Anthony Cataldo, Land Development, Planning and Zoning.
And I'm Nicholas Haynes, also Land Development and Department of Planning and Zoning.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And so we'll turn it over to the applicant to make their presentation. Try to keep it to less than 15 minutes, as I said, and then we'll go with DPZ comments and questions from the DAP. Just also let it be known that on this first project, I will be listening, but will recuse myself from making any comments on the project. That said, I'm not sure who's actually making the presentation on Brompton Phase 3. So I'll turn it over, whoever that is, if you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Thank you, Fred.
It'll be me.
So yeah, this is Rob Vogel. We're going to have Chad Atwater with Jay Davis will be actually providing the presentation. So we want to ask that he be able to share screen. I'll do a quick introduction of the project from a site perspective and civil perspective. Then Chad will be making the architectural part of the presentation. That'll be followed with Brian Reitz from Design Collective, who is our project landscape architect. So I know there's a time constraint. We got a late start, so I'm gonna distill mine down.
That would be great, Rob. Yeah, I mean, if you all could, I know you got 3 presenters, and what happens when you have 3 presenters, you start eating up a lot of time. So please try to keep it to less than 15 minutes.
Thanks, Fred. We'll do our best, and I will try to give the abridged.
Maybe don't let Brian talk.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, he does a great job, so we have to. So again, that's our team. If we could, let's just go to the first slide. As you know, this is our 3rd trip actually on this parcel, this being the last parcel of a Blue Stream community. This is a 3rd element of apartments on this project, and we just seem to want to come back and see you guys over and over. So this is the 3rd. Hopefully this is we're done. I do want to mention the reason for this one, this return trip is certainly a change of program, but also that there's been a recent change in the zoning regulations. There was a zoning reg amendment which basically allows us to eliminate the non-residential component and just focus on the residential component. So I think that's just of interest of why we're back again. So most of you guys know the Blue Stream is located. You've seen this 3 times. Blue Stream is located north of 175 on Route 1. It's located on the southbound side, or what I would say is the west side of Route 1. It's located north of Howard Square. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's located south of the of Route 100. This particular project is as I mentioned, go to the next slide, is the last part of the Blue Stream community. So this map shows the Blue Stream community. What's outlined in orange is the subject tonight. All the other sections are constructed or finishing being constructed. They are comprised of Brompton 1 and Brompton 2, which are apartment components, and then basically three neighborhoods of townhouses, which two are constructed. One is being built out currently. There's various amenities located throughout Blue Stream, and again, I'm going to try to accelerate so we can move on here. A little bit of a photo tour here. This particular series of pictures is showing Blue Stream, showing the Blue Stream, this particular parcel. It's showing it from the intersection of Blue Stream Drive and Route 1, and then Quidditch, which is located it runs basically parallel to Route 1, if you will, intersects Blue Stream Drive. So we have a perspective from there. And we're just basically looking at this vacant piece of property, which is the subject of this meeting. Again, some different views. The view on the top right is basically the flea market would be off to your right. The flea market and retail would be off to your right, and we're looking at, again, this piece of property. Other views from Route 1. Let's go to the last picture slide, I believe. I find this picture of interest because recently we were able to complete a part of this project that I think was really required. That is the signalization of the Route 1 Blue Stream intersection, both for pedestrians and vehicles. You can see the crossings that were recently constructed to go east to west on Route 1 and also north to south across Blue Stream Drive. The bottom right shows the property to our north, which is the retail and the flea market that exists out there today. Just real quick, I wanted to speak about a couple of constraints of the site. And one of them being, if you've been past the site, you'll realize that about midway between the property to the right on this view and Blue Stream Drive, Route 1 really dips down. And although we're a flat pad, we have to accommodate that grade of that is created by Route 1 dropping off so dramatically to a low point and then back up. So actually the elevation on the right of this picture where the flea market is and then to the intersection of Blue Stream Drive are quite similar elevations with the dip occurring in the middle. Obviously you could see all the other constructed constraints, that being the townhouse community up here to what would really be the west, and Blue Stream Drive, our access across from the existing access to the Brompton 1 apartment project. And so again, without belaboring the point, there are obviously a bunch of constraints when you're dealing with your last piece of property. Lastly, the area in the middle where you see the storm field, that is an underground stormwater management system that's been there for some time. It does discharge ultimately to the storm drain in Route 1 and crosses to the other side of Route 1. So that parking field is to us is somewhat a protected area because that is how we have to continue to provide our stormwater detention for this project. So this project is grandfathered to the old regulations. We're not really providing ESD with this project. We are doing quantity control, significant quantity control with this project. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Chad and let him speak in regards to the architecture. Take it away, Chad.
Great. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's time here, and I'll try to move quickly because we have quite a few slides. So just to quickly summarize, this project has essentially three different building types. We've got at the corner of Blue Stream and Route 1, this sort of corridor, 4-story apartment building. As you progress into the site, it drops in height to the townhomes, 3-story townhome configuration. And then along Route 1, the primary building frontage is this wrap style building with an integrated parking structure that's hidden, within the wrapped building. Other things to note on here, we really see this corner here is a focus highlight point, especially with the stoplight there. That's going to become a pretty prominent elevation, which we'll show shortly. We did, due to some of the constraints that Rob had mentioned, we aligned our site entry across from the previous phase work. So there's a nice connection, visual connection here that also gives you a view into the clubhouse amenity and sort of the public space. General circulation, as you can see, kind of comes in, orients you towards the building, and then circles around into the parking lot and then back out. Big picture items, trash services, you can see here marked in yellow, inward facing, all contained within the building until they're picked up in a screened area down here, which is also screened with landscaping, and Brian can speak about some of that later on. And then we have a secondary trash area contained within the building at the back of the site, up against the existing townhomes. Just quickly here, part of this, the goal of this project, one was to establish, how we address Route 1. It's a significant part of this building and this elevation. And, there's different ways to treat it. And then the other goal, one of the other goals for this project was, treating this as an experience for if you're passing by or for current residents. And so we really wanted to break that up along the facade, one, to help change or accommodate the length of the building. And what you see here are these little yellow sort of highlights are sort of focus points, the big picture moments that define the site. They occur along Washington Boulevard. They occur from both directions on Route 1. As you turn into Blue Stream, there's a visual connection that you could say that sort of connects from each point as you progress into the site. And we really see it as a sort of a wayfinding map in a way that sort of directs you into the site, to the clubhouse, and then a visual connection into the parking garage. And if I continue that thought, which you'll see in the architecture and the landscape, is, at those points, we want to amplify that. We want to celebrate those moments with some nice architecture, those big moments. And so these highlighted areas and then these darker spots you'll see on the elevations is really moments that we're celebrating. Go to the next slide. So a little bit bigger picture on the plan. I won't go into all the specifics that Rob just mentioned about the restrictions that we had. It is a tough site. It's a large site, and in a way, we're sort of bound by what's existing, which is that storm water. So the important thing here is really how we work around that and meet the program for a project like this to succeed. So kind of going around the site here, I just kind of point out some things. In terms of height, we're about 55 feet or so along Washington Boulevard at this corridor building and the wrap building. We step down as we come into the site to a 3-story configuration, which really starts to align with the rest of the community. So there's a nice gradual presence on the corner, which we think is valuable for the road, and then more of a pedestrian walkable neighborhood scale as you progress back. Alignment across, to align entries to the previous phases, and then again this really strong viewpoint into the club amenity. We have some nice landscaping in here and a drop-off area that's really a nice visual connection to where you're going. I'll kind of keep going on here. In terms of site sections, understanding that Route 1 is an important front. It is a long facade with some slope, and so we spent a lot of time thinking about that and how we could address that. If you start with site section 1, you can see that's a cut through where the building sets back to the right of this plan would be the flea market. And so at the top of that hill, you're really getting a nice view of the building, and you're seeing the dip down and then back up to the light. And so this section here kind of shows the amount of sort of forgiving nature of the building here, where we step back. We also undulate the facade, which you'll see in the elevations. And we landscape that. There's a nice stone retaining wall there, and Brian can speak to the things we did there to help relieve some of that walled effect that can happen if you're right up against the street. Site section 2 is really just, again, a cut where the building gets a little bit closer. You can kind of see that here, closer to the street. We think at that point, there's sort of compression happening. You're coming to the stoplight. It's a slower pace. And so we get a little closer to the road, more of a presence at that corner of Blue Stream and Route 1. And that you'll see in the images that's really a corner placeholder there. Section 3 is really just a cut through the middle of the site. It's generally what you don't see, which is the garage. You do have a view of the courtyard down here on the right, which you'd probably get a little bit of view of that as you're driving by. And then there's the interior parking, surface parking lot. And you can see on the left the corridor style building that holds the street along Blue Stream Drive relative to the buildings across the street. In terms of elevations, we're going to look at some architecture here and then followed by some perspectives, because I think the important thing here that we really tried to focus on was a contemporary building, something that's more timeless in terms of materials. We took a long look at sort of the history of Elk Ridge and really kind of attached to the different forges that were in the area, the Thomas Viaduct, and the commonality with all these things is the sort of timelessness of it, and it's still valid today. And so we really wanted to have a modern, contemporary look of the architecture, something that's going to still be hold its place in 10 years and has a nice frontage for the community and for the county, and to really help keep cleaning up Route 1 and adding to that streetscape. So you can see here at the corner of Blue Stream and Washington Boulevard, we use brick, primarily brick, and then we have some lap siding, vertical lap siding above, and then large openings. We want lots of light and a lot of transparency. So there's that connection in relationship between those that live there, those that don't, and then just feeling like it activates the street. We add some balconies, and then I'll show you on here perspective of that. So this is really a view looking at the corner of entering into Blue Stream and Route 1 to your right, which you can kind of see the dip in the road and it comes back up. So really these statement pieces, if you recall those yellow markers, are really what we're celebrating on this building. This is the moment that sort of defines, and as you go into the site, there's more of these. And then in between that, in terms of the field of architecture, is where we step back. We have balconies. We change the materials a little bit in the facade and start to create some rhythm and proportion. Moving a little faster, as you come down Blue Stream Drive, just before you get into the community entrance to this project, again, you'll see this gray area, which is a panel of some sort. It could be a lap siding, but a lighter feel to it. And so that's recessed a little bit from the corners of the brick. We want to give some relief there. And then as you enter the site, again, we have another moment where there's this large sort of brick element that really marks, okay, this is the Brompton community, and this is its own designation. Here's a view perspective as you would enter into the community, and this would be looking across the street from one of the previous phases. Things to note here, which we really like, is the openness, the visual connection to the clubhouse, which you kind of see here. There's some open area up here for outdoor space. And then there's another visual connection back to the parking garage, which is actually masking the parking garage with units. and you can kind of see that back there. So there's a nice sort of progression from Route 1 to a more residential and then pedestrian friendly community. There's just another view of that clubhouse and the entry point. To the left, you can see where we step down for townhomes. And so we're going from 4 stories on the right down to 3 stories. And to give you a picture of what we're thinking for those townhomes, the same sort of contemporary look, brick with some detailing that's just simple, clean, big openings. We really want to have that townhome feel, but also pick up on the manor style buildings across the street, and we want to fit in with that context. And we think this is sort of the next, clearly the next phase, compared to what's been done before. And then here's a perspective of that, kind of gives you the sense of scale. If you'll notice in the background, you can kind of see the manor buildings in that shape. We sort of mimic that, but in a townhome format. And then I'll wrap around to the Route 1 facade, very important facade. Again, to mark the facade, as we had on Blue Stream and Route 1 entrance into the site, at the flea market, which would be to the right, you essentially have another brick mass that holds the end. This portion of the building, the brick, and this next phase up to this dark gray point, is recessed back quite a bit from the roadway. So we pull back, we undulate the facade with some different bays and rhythms and balconies to create that sort of lighter openness feel. And Brian will speak to about the community garden area that we have out front. To Rob's point, this is the beginning of the site wall, which we see as a nice stone material, really picking up on the existing palette from the earlier phases. We want to landscape that. There's some things that we've done to relieve that walled effect, so it becomes tiered. There's landscaping on it. It could be lit. And so as you're coming down Route 1, we're getting at this point about at the lowest point of the dip, and here we're still stepped back quite a bit from the road, so there's a nice relief there. There's some gardens out front here that creates that sort of open feeling and recessed feeling. As we continue down, at this point, we're starting to approach, about to approach getting up to the light and go back uphill. And so we changed the facade. Again, this portion of the building is stepped out. Same materials in terms of, lap siding, balconies, some canopies, and, some brick detailing to keep things simple but clean. Continuing down, at this point, we also have a view, sort of a glimpse into the site as you move along, the same sort of material palette in another entry marker. And then that takes us back to Blue Stream and Route 1 intersection, which we saw that perspective earlier, another marker point of the entry. And then just to give you a quick perspective of that, from the top of Washington Boulevard at the flea market, this is kind of what we were just looking at in a perspective format. So here you can see the step backs, the recesses in the building, and the massing, and how much the building is set back from the road. And then we pop out here and then just undulate some of the forms as we get down to the entry of Blue Stream Drive. And lastly, in terms of material palette, we really see this is pretty simple and clean. A couple different brick colors, some brick detailing, really trying to create more of a timeless look and something that has a nice contribution to the community. And that's most of it right there for the architecture. I will pass it on to Brian.
Well, Chad, can you just,
the landscape.
yeah, if you don't mind just advancing the slides for me, and I'll put a bow on this here in this last couple of minutes. But I'm sorry, one previous to that, Chad.
Here you go.
So, overall, Chad's walked you through the site. You understand the constraints in the middle. Essentially, we've got, we wanted to focus on the entry sequence, that main entry leading up to the clubhouse, and sort of improve that experience and clean up those geometries. The clubhouse really, is the center of the programmatic activity for the site. So we'll go through just a couple enlargements so you can see this, but essentially from a programming standpoint, we want to build off the clubhouse, create what we call a 4 seasons amenity, which gives you, shoulder season and winter season use with grills and other immense fire pits and things like that. We've located a pool adjacent to the clubhouse that'll have bathroom access and all the sort of adjacent amenities with a small pool house off of it. Essentially a project like this, we really need to utilize every kind of nook and cranny that's left on the site in order to, create a dynamic amenity package. So we've worked in that 4 seasons amenity area. We've worked in the pool. We've got a playground area and a number of seating nooks throughout the space. And then you can see in the format of how this breaks out, there is a courtyard on the right-hand side of the page that we've essentially focused around the idea of a bark park, because we know that will draw activity to that location. So if you go to the next slide, before I sort of show you a few of the blow-ups, we focused on a language that we established when we did Brompton 1, which was what you're seeing here in red on the left, which is a low 2-foot wall that we use, and I'll show you an image of that on the next slide. But essentially, it's a nice transition piece from the more busy street of Blue Stream Drive as you transition in, and it makes the buildings feel like they're set behind a more private zone. As Chad mentioned, on the south side here, you can start to see the grades. We dip by about 10 feet in the middle, and I think you saw in those elevations how at the greatest part of the dip, we transition to a 2-tiered wall so that we can get landscape at multiple levels to really break the scale and the harshness of that down by using landscape. And I hope that came across in the sections. And then what you're seeing in blue is what we're using to essentially provide security and fencing around the pool and so forth. So along the perimeter of some of the amenity, particularly on the right of the Bark Park where we're adjacent to the flea market, we've got just a 6-foot fence with landscaping that helps make that transition. If you go to the next slide. This is the low wall and sort of existing aesthetic across the street. So you can see how we use landscape in a tiered form to create that transition up to the housing. Go to the next slide, please. And essentially, there's a whole kit of parts: columns, low walls, mixed walls where they're stone and brick. And this is essentially established in all the existing phase. When we did this in phase 1, it was picked up on phase 2 and the townhome. So we'll be looking to that in order to tie this last property together. Go next, Chad, next slide. So real quickly, you can see the sort of special paving, the treatment at the front entry. We'll have those 2-foot walls curve into the main entry, where we'll have a number of columns that'll help us hold the gate arms and control points to the project. But we use the special paving to tie the main entrance all the way back to the clubhouse, making sure that smaller building on the left, feels tied in to the main clubhouse entry. And then, as Chad said, circulation in the center, from a vehicular standpoint, essentially creates a big circle that allows you access to the garage and then a drop-off zone adjacent to the clubhouse entrance. Next slide. When you transition through the clubhouse, you can see that we've got a fire pit area, trellis TV, adjacent to the clubhouse. Again, that's the 4 seasons aspect of it: grills, other amenities that allow the clubhouse to be utilized to its maximum potential. The pool is pushed over a little bit to the side, but we have bathroom access from the clubhouse out there. The idea here is to create a nice resort-esque style pool without, breaking the bank. So working in special amenities such as the Chase Lounge shelf. We're not looking at a hot tub here, but we are looking at sort of like a social corner in the pool for people to hang out in a special zone, and then Laminar jets. So, within that, we then look to add dining pods and things like that, because grills are really important for these types of complexes, since you can't have them on your balconies. Here's a few precedent of, what we're starting to think of from a finish standpoint. You can go to the next slide. As you move around the corner, we have this triangular piece of land where we've tucked in a playground. We like that it has pathway access over to the pool, but is also somewhat separate. And then we've worked in some smaller seating pockets so that, this isn't just about play. You could also come out here and read a book or grab a small area for a dinner party, for example. Next slide. As you move around, I made reference to the Bark Park, and in this, when I was talking with Keith with Mern Management, who's part of the management team for this, he was saying that on these jobs, about 30% of the people have dogs, which is an incredible amount. So utilizing that to our advantage, and particularly because this open space is a little bit remote from the clubhouse, we integrated the dog park here as something that would be a key feature in drawing residents through the property to this particular zone. What we wanted to do that was a little different here is in the center, we're looking at a shade structure element in a gathering space that has connectivity and relationship to the dog park. So you can pull a stool up to, a cool little detail along the fence, and have a beer while, your friends brought the dogs down to run in the dog area. Gaming lawn, decorative lights, and other amenities that make this attractive. And then, as Chad mentioned, and I think this is my last slide and we're finished, we've got a small area where the building along Route 1 steps back. And it seemed to be a good opportunity for us to try to make something out of that, to provide extra amenity for the project. So what we've done is located a few outdoor dining pods, or I'm sorry, a few sort of vegetable garden / garden, cut flower garden type areas with small dining pods tucked into the middle with some cool lights sort of strung around them, creating a couple smaller, intimate moments for residents, because we know that people in these sort of complexes are really searching for those small intimate moments. I think that's it, Chad. I think that might have been oh, I'm sorry. This is definitely the last slide. Chad mentioned building services coming down. We needed to be strategic about where we brought out trash, having a dumpster staging area, and also having clear truck access as you came into the project. So you can see the zone that's striped out to allow dumpster and trash pickup to happen. We've hidden that behind some landscaping into a sort of a secondary zone, as well as accommodating the emergency access out of the stairwells in that location. So it's a tricky little area where we're trying to do a lot, but we think it works effectively. And I think that wraps it up.
That's it.
Okay, thanks guys for a very thorough presentation. As I said, I'm going to recuse myself from making comments on this particular project. So with that said, I'll turn it over to DPZ for their staff presentation, and then the DAP will ask any questions and make any comments, and then we'll follow up with motions. So turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the design team. You guys did I think you did a very thorough job of explaining, how your revised design with your new format fits within the constraints of that Brompton 3 property. As Mr. Vogel mentioned earlier, this project's been before the panel before. As I included in the staff report, you last saw it in June in 2019, where a different format was presented, but due to Council Bill 8 of this year, with the CAC requirements changing in terms of commercial, they've opted to update their design, as you've seen, and move forward with this new project. So planning and zoning, we'd like the panel to please evaluate recommendations on the new orientation and layout of how the new design flows within this space. If you could make recommendations and comments on how you on how you feel this interfaces, especially with Route 1, with all the, the on-site elements and stuff that they have. We greatly appreciate that. If you could also make comments on the architectural and scale. And we realized that the architecture has changed from what the project was last time. Does this fit within the context of the surrounding neighborhood a little bit better? If you could give some details on that, and then the amenity spaces and open spaces, the new layout. Does this does the form and function of these areas, does it work better within the context of this project? I think they've shown us a lot of new design cues, and we'd like the panel to please comment on it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to recuse myself from making comments, so I'm going to turn it over to one of my colleagues. Let's and get them to kick us off here on any questions or comments. Vivian, are you still with us? Maybe you could start us off.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First off, I think the site plan is a vast improvement from the last time we saw it. I think you really picked up on some of our comments, especially mine about connecting the green spaces. I love the connection from the adjacent property to this property, the green spaces and the amenity spaces, particularly the location of the pool, adjacent to it's not the clubhouse, but your amenity space, whatever that is, the big purple blob. That all of that siting seems to work really well. And I think that's a vast improvement. It's also accessible to the adjacent townhouse community to the, I guess it's to the north. I don't know, I'm all turned around. But I really liked that. I guess I really like the appearance of the facades, the brick portions especially. My only critique would just be the Route 1 elevation seems to be a little bit lacking. I don't know, to me it seems a little bit disjointed, and I'm wondering if maybe there's just too many different languages going on. I know it's a long facade and you're trying to break it up, but maybe you could just try to simplify it a little bit. To me, I feel like the portions where you have the gray cementitious panels are less successful than the brick portions and the dark vertical siding portions. But overall, I think it's really, nicely designed, really skillful. I love the scale of the portions that kind of look like warehousey, windows, and I think that's really nice, especially along that road. I think it's appropriate in scale and it's very nice. So good job. Really nice improvement from the last time we saw it. Really good attention to, I won't comment too much on the landscaping, but it looks like there's just a lot of attention and detail placed towards that. So I really commend you. A lot of design effort went into it, and good job. All right, that's all I have to say.
Great, thanks, Vivian.
Yep.
How about over to Larry, since Vivian kind of gave you the cue for the landscape there.
Yeah, I also think it's a great improvement from the last submittal. I do like the architecture. I think it's refreshingly different. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the townhouses that are already there. They're more the traditional that you see, the 3-story with the colonial type facades. But I do like the contemporary flair, the kind of looking at my notes here as I talk, kind of that tie to the industrial past, that warehouse loft looking type of architecture that Vivian hinted at. I think it's really appropriate for that Elk Ridge area. It's also a really nice mix of brickstone and I think a nice balance and layering of masses and voids and kind of a rhythm that's going on. Doesn't really bother me that there's some different things going along the Route 1 corridor. I think, we're trying to get that more urban boulevard look, and I think we're getting it there. I like the way you celebrated the grade change with the dip with the two-tiered stone wall and the plantings there. I think that's a nice touch that helps break up the solid, wall of building because there are different setbacks there. Let's see. I think that, and then also I like the idea that the large apartment buildings, the architecture ties in nicely with the proposed townhouses. I mean, townhouses are different than what's there now, but I think that's an okay thing. And I think the tie between the scale of the large building to the smaller building of the smaller scale of the townhouses is great. I did have a couple questions for Brian. The landscape plan is rather conceptual at this point, but I'm hoping that, I see images that show sort of pollinator type garden things and native plants. And I'm hoping that the final palette will include, things that are, could be street trees, but they could be sycamores or birches or, different things that tie in with the native plantings in the area. But I'll let you all decide what that should be as you get further into the design. But as far as conceptually, how it's heavily planted, which is a really nice way of softening up, all the sort of the hard architecture aspect of the site. Can you go to the site plan, the one that you had used for the presentation, Brian? That has the buildings and the parking lots and the amenity spaces.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, just the smaller scale one that shows them all. Okay, yeah, that's good. So I think that is a really nice connection between the clubhouse and the pool and the fire pit area, and then the connection to the play area. Is the entire site fenced with the decorative metal fencing? Is it so it's really just for the residents of this this last phase, or are others like in the townhouses to the north east, are they able to use these amenities, or is the idea that you have to live in this community to use the amenities?
Yeah, the idea is that the folks that are going to have apartments here, these will be their amenities. Essentially, if you look right across the street in the top left corner, that's a clubhouse for that has a pool and its own set of amenities for the adjacent parcels.
Okay. So I like the connectivity between the pool and that, and then the play area, the pathway that goes there. They're two separate spaces, but yet linked. I was wondering, is there any such similar connection between the Bark Park area and the outdoor garden area that front on Route 1? I see space there, but I see a walkway that looks like it maybe just goes into the building. Yeah, right where your cursor is.
Yeah,
Is there any opportunity to link those by a similar type path, or is it the idea that you don't want, people that are using the dog park to be in the garden area?
No, I think we could explore that. It's a little tight there. So, as we get into making sure that the grading all works out, it's possible we could sneak in a pathway. It's just four-story building in a very shallow area. So, right now it doesn't include it, but doesn't mean that it couldn't.
Okay. And then, so the main access to these spaces is through, can you walk me through that? I mean, you come down like a interior corridor and then out? I mean, I don't have a cursor, but say you're in one of the units that are facing onto the playground area, but you want to go to the dog park. Are you using the interior corridor then to get to that space? Or?
Yeah, I think there's a missing line here in the plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but right where the word Bark Park is written, and you see that pathway that sort of goes from left to right on the plan. We've talked about a corridor right there in the building to allow residents to come and enter that way. There's also access to the stair tower at the end, but it would be more of a connection similar to you can kind of see it where the playground ties into the building. You can see where the corridor sort of sneaks through there. Yeah, thank you, Chad.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So there are multiple exits to these spaces. It just depends on where your unit is. You may have to spend more of your time in an interior corridor getting
That's
to
right.
the exit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
I mean,
I think it's the nature of, you know, the beast. It's just the site's challenging. So
right. Yeah, if it was just even slightly more space on like the I guess the east end and the west end, it'd be kind of cool if all those amenities were connected within your you know, ornamental fencing, and that you could actually make a loop around the building if you're walking, you know, from the pool terrace through the playground area along the backside, and then, you know, come into another open space with a park, and continuing into those gardens, and even if it was possible to, you know, connect it along the rest of that Route 1 corridor to, you know, come back into the kind of the loop area at the clubhouse. But I understand that it's tight, and I guess if you want to do that, you just use the sidewalk along Route 1. And one final question is, I know it's gated, but say you're in the garden area. I see the evidence, it's tiny on my screen, but there's a gate there. Can someone in the garden area just go out onto the walkway on Route 1? Or is that just more of a, you know, a gate that would only be used for maintenance or something? Yeah, right there.
no, I'm fairly certain we would key fob that. So, you know, let's just say somebody lives on that end of the property and wants to go for a run. You know, they
Okay.
decide they could exit out the building and enter the building there, but only if you have key fob access.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just
Okay.
from a security standpoint.
Right. Well, I have no other comments. I think you did a great job for the constraints of the site. I love the architecture, and I'm just going forward, just, you know, make sure that the landscape goes. I know it's conceptual now, but you know, starts to, you know, call out the things that are in your images in terms of color, texture, and hopefully native where you can. But good
Absolutely.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. See, Dan, are you still with us? Dan?
Yes, I'm still here.
Great. So do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, so the one thing that grabbed my attention was that they were saying they were doing quantity control for stormwater management. What is the plan for quality for stormwater management?
Sure, Dan, this is Rob. So this is the old 1 year extended detention. So it's actually 1 year extended detention, kind of CPV. And then on top of that, we have detention, and due to the fact that we're basically discharging to the Route 1 storm drain system, this facility the underground facility is actually designed for 10-year and 25-year detention. So it's extended detention with the full storm 25-year storm detention on top of that. So that was the stormwater management criteria when this park was developed. That is actually what's underground today, and so we'll be frankly just rearranging that and providing the same type of design.
So basically what you're saying is there's just quantity, no quality.
Well, there is the 1 year extended detention under there, with the fact that I think
Yeah, but that has to deal with quantity.
that does. If you just give me a second. So what we have in the bottom is that original design is we have the stone with sand, and we actually had really great infiltration rates there as well. This part of Route 1, as you know, the Route 1 corridor is, you can hit sand, you can hit clay, and you can have sand over clay and gravel over clay. So this particular area, we did have good infiltration, and that 1 year storm basically is being infiltrated.
Okay. Although I wouldn't kind of like think about using what grass areas that you do have to kind of do landscaping where they become like mini bioretentions, just so we can get more infiltration into the ground as much as possible. So that would be my only suggestion. The other thing that I did love the architecture. I love how they broke it up It's not just one straight line going along Route 1. I think that was greatly done. I would like to see a little bit more pedestrian traffic, and others have already brought it up. Like, I want to go to community gardens, but I also want it connected to the Bark Park, and that can easily connect to the playground. If that would have been possible, or at least show the path for that pedestrian traffic, would be great. And so that there are sidewalks there. Otherwise, I think that's about it, guys. I think great job.
All right, well, thanks, Dan. Okay, with that, does anybody in the DAP want to make any motions for recommendations?
I would like to make just one. This is Larry Quark. One simple DAP. I guess it's a recommendation or motion.
Motion.
Okay, motion. That the applicant, understanding the constraints of the sites, just take another look at whether it's possible to, as Dan had indicated, linking the amenities from the pool to the playground, and then around the west side of the building to the Bark Park, and then to the community garden area. I know it's tight, but just take another look at that and just see if it's possible to make that link. I think it would be a really nice way for someone to enjoy all those spaces on one walk.
Do I have a second on Larry's motion?
I'll second.
Looks like Dan's raised his hand. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Vivian, Dan, and Larry all
Aye.
voting aye. Okay, thank you. Any other motions? No, silence is golden. Okay. Well, I think that's it. Great job to the team. You guys have done a great job. It looks like a really great project to complete this massive project on the Route 1 corridor. And thanks for the time tonight and taking us through a thorough presentation. Thanks again. And I think we're on to our next presenter, if they're still with us.
Yep, I just pulled Ron and Sam into
Okay, thanks, guys.
in as presenters. Ron,
Okay.
Sam, are there any additional members on your team who needs to be pulled in?
I have David Mitchell. If you can bring him in, he is our landscape architect, and he may be answering some questions
Okay.
for the panel.
Yep. Anyone else? I brought him in.
There is Tim Burkhardt, the developer, also for questions. He's not going to do a presentation, just for questions.
Okay, Tim is in. Who's going to be running the presentation for you guys? Who should I make the presenter?
Me. I will.
Perfect. 1 second. All right. Fred, I think they are ready to go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming in and presenting tonight. I think you probably know the process here. We'll introduce ourselves, and you all introduce yourselves and just take it away. Please try to keep your presentation succinct in 15 minutes or less, because we're really running behind tonight. We still got your project and another one. Then DPZ will make some comments, DAP will ask some questions, and then we'll make motions. So with that said, I'm Fred Marino. I'm the chair, and I'm an architect. Over to Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry Quark, and I'm a landscape architect.
Vivian.
Hi, Vivian Stone, and I am an architect as well.
Dan.
And Lovett, civil engineer.
Over to Anthony.
Anthony Cataldo, Division of Land Development, Planning and Zoning.
And Nick.
Nicholas Haynes, I'm land development, planning and zoning.
Okay, great. So if you all on the presentation side wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and then jump into your presentation. And as I said, please try to keep it to 15 minutes or less. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Sam Alomar. I'm a civil engineer with Mildenberg, Bowender and Associates.
My name is Ron Johnston. I'm an architect.
I'm Dave Mitchell with a landscape architect with Mildenberg Bowender. Yep. My name's Tim Burkhardt. I'm the developer of the project.
Okay, I'm going to start. I promise I'll be much shorter. We're a much simpler and smaller project. Our project is 22 unit, age restricted, 55 plus conditional use. Our project is on Rogers Avenue. We are south of Route 70 and west of Rogers Avenue. To the south of the project, we have 4 residential lots in this area. To the west, we have the Ellicott Hill community. It's a condominium, townhomes, and apartment buildings. Like I said, we are 22 duplex units, and of the 22 units, we're going to have 6 attached units. I'm going to move on to the next plan, just to go into more detail. As you see, guys, the site has a length to depth, a width to depth ratio of 5:1. We are about 200 feet wide and about 1,000 feet deep. That puts some constraints or some difficulties in our layout. However, this is our layout. This is our design. We're zoned R20. The site area is 6.3 acres. The number of units allowed is 24 units. We're proposing 22 units. Like I said, 6 of those 22 units are a stick of 3 townhomes, as you can see in this area. The rest are semi-detached duplexes. The open space requirement is 35%, and we're providing that and much more. The site has wetlands. To the west has a stream also and some floodplain. The site is sloping east to west. Like I said, we're adjoining Route 70 and Rogers Avenue. The units are, the size of each unit is about 52 by 28, roughly. Ron will talk more about the size and the mapping of those units. We're proposing 1 private road. All the proposed units will be facing this private road. None of these units will be facing directly the road. The project is very shielded from the existing roads, especially from Rogers Avenue, by existing trees, and we are proposing additional landscaping that will provide more separation. The site will be, the private road will be built to public road standard, 26 feet wide, with the sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk on one side. It will end up with a cul-de-sac. The building height will be about 25, the mean height 25 feet. We'll comply with the zoning. There's going to be, the zoning allows us up to 34. We are complying with all the bulk regulations as far as setbacks from adjoining properties and public roads. The units will be, of course, universal design compliant. I guess that's it as far as the general description of the property. I want to just share a few things, if you allow me. This is the view from the site across the street. You can see the existing trees. These trees are to remain. Behind those trees, you can see the existing house. It's a historic house. However, this house has essentially lost its character and has been not maintained well, and has had many facade changes, and it actually has been moved when they built Route 70. So the site has some specimen trees on it. The woods, as you can see, the forest stand shows 1 forest stand area. We are clearing some woods, but we are trying to keep most of the wooded area intact. We're adding more landscaping along the road, and we're adding landscaping as perimeter one along the existing, the 4 single-family lots or units. I'm going to move on to the landscape plan. Again, I'm going to talk about the landscaping a little bit, and Dave, please correct me if I say something wrong. We're providing landscaping on the southern perimeter and the northern one. We're providing more landscaping than required, and this was in reflection to the community meetings we held with the neighbors. They requested more landscaping. Some of them requested a privacy fence or a privacy wall. This is something still being considered, but as far as landscaping, we are definitely providing more than required. There is a community building. The minimum size required per zoning is 500. We're proposing a 750 square feet community building. We try to enlarge it. I'm going to leave these for Ron to talk about. I guess I spent my probably 10 minutes, so I'm going to move the mic to Ron. Ron?
Yes, these are the exteriors, the massing, the proportions of these houses are intended to be in keeping with the contextual single-family residences to the south there of the site. Those residences tend to be somewhat older. They do vary in age, but they're all very traditional gabled house forms. Many of them are siding. A few of them are brick. And there is a variety of styles, but all within that kind of traditional vocabulary of the gabled roof and largely siding exteriors. And so what we've done here is take these duplex units and broken down the massing through working the plans and the exteriors to create more of a sense of 2 single-family homes that happen to be attached. We've got differences in the massing themselves, even though the floor plans are very close to identical, in the materiality, in the colors that we're using. So we're trying to break down the massing of the larger building into what's perceived as 2 smaller individual buildings. These buildings are also designed to be very accessible, as they would need to be, as a 55 plus dwelling units, where there are no steps. For example, at the front doors, there are no steps between the garages and the interior of the house. Hallways are wide, doors are 3 feet wide. So we're trying to make these very accessible to the intended homeowners here. The actual mean ridge heights, mean roof heights, as you see from the presentation, are about 10 feet lower than would be allowable under the R20 zoning. And our intent from the beginning was to keep these houses, to keep the massing down. As you're aware, many garage attached dwellings are 3 stories high, with the garage on the lower level, the main living area above, and then the bed level above that. We wanted to avoid that. So we did slightly wider, slightly deeper footprints in order to keep these units down at a manageable massing, manageable proportions for this particular site.
Okay, I guess that's it for us, guys. As far as Ron, are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, unless there are any specific questions that I'd be happy to answer.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you all for making that presentation. And let's turn it over then to DPZ for any for their presentation. Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. DPZ, I think the design team did a good job explaining, what they have proposed. It's, and fairly simple, simply arranged site. Does have some environmental issues, with it, especially located on the western portion of the property. But it is a straightforward, fairly straightforward 22-unit age-restricted adult housing project. So they will still have to go through their conditional use, process, after this meeting. But it is allowed, they just have to go through that process to get there. Planning and zoning would like you guys, the panel, to please make recommendations on the orientation, layout, and configuration of the site plan. We've seen, a bunch of these projects and stuff, coming in, and going through these reviews. Does this proposed configuration and layout, does it fit? Does the panel feel it fits within the context of the existing neighborhood and the surrounding residences? I mean, I know that presenters, they provided some examples of the architecture and massing and stuff of the nearby homes. So if the panel could perhaps maybe touch on that, do you feel that this is a good fit for the area, and will it blend well, I guess, with the surrounding area? If you could make recommendations on the edge treatments, and how this proposed design relates within the area, and that it's proposed. I realize that it is, it does border 70 on that one side, on the northern side. So are there perhaps maybe some treatments or something that the panel might propose to maybe help soften that side a little bit? And then are there any amenities that the panel could perhaps recommend? Is this meeting the intent of what an age restricted development should be, or is there anything that the panel feels that maybe that the designers are lacking, or something that they might have overlooked that would really help move this design forward? If you guys could provide us commentary on that, we'd be greatly appreciative.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. Okay, well, I'll turn it over to my colleagues, see if they have any comments or questions. How about we start with Dan this time?
Yeah, it looks like you had a couple of areas for stormwater management out there, which I always like to see when we have 3 or 4 different areas designated stormwater management. What were your plans on putting in those areas?
Those areas will have micro bioretentions, and we are proposing multiple micro bioretentions. Currently, we're proposing 5 of them. The micro bioretention has a restriction of a maximum half-acre drainage area to it, so we had to break them into 4 or 5 of them. Maybe, I mean, the design has not been finalized yet, but maybe 5 of them at least.
Okay, yeah, great. I saw that in there. Thank you for that. My other question would be is, I noticed you had the sidewalk along the north side of the cul-de-sac, but not on the south side. Is there a reason why it can't be provided on the south side?
The private access place, the standard section for the public road, the 26-foot wide, it's actually 24, but when you have townhomes, you need to make it 26. Request or proposes the sidewalk on one side only. So we just adhere to that section, or we comply to that section. We look at the idea of adding the sidewalk on the other side, but that will add more impervious, and it will add more, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we look at that, but like I said, the standard section proposes or requires one sidewalk on one side only, and that's why we did it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that would just be my suggestion on there.
Okay.
Anytime you can add more sidewalks for pedestrian traffic, I think it's a good thing. Okay. So something to consider. Other than that, on the civil section on here, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Vivian, how about over to you? Any comments, questions?
I do have one question. You've got elevations of the duplexes, but what are the elevations with the three houses side by side look like.
Right. The intent of the townhouse at this point would be to essentially take the end unit from one of these, and if you look at the, say, the middle rendering here, would be to take that right-hand unit, mirror reverse it, and add it to the left-hand end. We had not intended to develop yet a third different unit at this point. So it would basically be a mirror reversal of the right-hand unit, and that would be attached to the left-hand end of the stick.
And are there going to be more variations in color and material, or is this how every duplex is going to look?
That would be probably more a question for the developer at this point. That I think there would be, and I would certainly prefer there to be, variation in the colors from unit to unit. The idea we're trying to represent here is that we do want, while they're colors that do complement each other, we want a contrast, right? We don't want these to appear in any way to be at one single family building. So whatever colors we would be using, different color palettes that we might be using, the idea is that there would be some contrast between the adjacent units.
And yes, this is a Tim Burkhardt. Yes, there would be some color differentiation between the buildings, as Ron said, but we did want to keep the contrast. So they're not all going to be identical to what's shown right now, but there will be different color palettes available.
Can you go back to the site plan? This does look very familiar to me because I think we reviewed a development like this over by Ilchester Road, I think, not too long ago. And I think some of the comments from that review apply here as well. I think compared to the context, the immediate context, the structures are huge compared to the other houses. They don't seem to really, I feel like it's a little overbuilt, the site, and I know that you're saying you're building two fewer units than are allowed, but it just seems to be a little bit overbuilt for the site. And then the community building, not quite sure, you're kind of checking off the box, but it's a small footprint, not really sure what that's going to be used for. And the sidewalk, and I understand why you did it. You've got fewer curb cuts on that side of the road, but that's the side of the road that goes to the bridge that crosses over 70. And I would think if you wanted a sidewalk, you'd want one that connects down to Ridge Road, which is more of a walkable road, really, for the residents. Just looking at the site, there's not a whole lot for them to do right on their little private road. So I'm imagining they probably want to go, walking outside that neighborhood to connect down to Ridge Road, maybe take a little wander down there.
Okay.
And then I know that buffer that faces 70 is really noisy. I know it's high. There's a big elevation difference, but I've been there. I know how noisy it is. So not really sure what to suggest to curb that, but that is a concern. If you look at the zoom out to previous page where it's in context with the rest of the area, it's a lot closer to 70 than, for example, the that neighborhood to the left, where you have, there's a lot of density there in that neighborhood, but that is kind of a pocket that's all kind of planned together as a community. This one is kind of just an island off by itself. but it is quiet. It's quiet there. As far as, you know, being across from Church Lane, I grew up off of Church Lane, so I'm very familiar with this site. Both my parents are buried in that graveyard right across the street. So I know the neighborhood. It is a very nice area and it's quiet, but I don't know, just I don't know that the scale of those buildings. I'm just trying to compare it to those townhouses over by, you know, right there. To me, they just look. Do you know how they compare to those over there? The size of those? You can kind of see too that.
If you, can I share another screen? I think.
Sure.
So it looks like these are. Give me a second. I don't know if these units are back-to-back units or because this is, I mean, that's a big size townhome, I think.
I think these don't they have the alleys? Those are alleys, and I think they have the garages in the back. That's what that little road is.
Yeah,
They
and I think they're
front onto the
bigger.
main street, and they have alleys in the back where you can
Yeah,
park in
I
a
think
little garage.
I think they're bigger too, Vivian.
Okay.
I just drove through there this afternoon because I was coming home and I knew this project was coming up, and they are bigger, Fred. The massing of them is larger than what I think is being proposed.
Agreed.
Yeah, they are bigger. If without the garage, even they look bigger. 55 by 28, maybe 56 by 28. We're proposing 52 by 28, and that ours include the garage. So.
And the questions and comments certainly bring out the fact that this is really in an interesting location. We've got all the higher density stuff coming up Northridge Road, and we've got this kind of transition site almost between the single family dwellings and then four-story apartment buildings, three-story townhouse buildings, and we're trying to provide a design here that kind of mediates between those in the sense, you know, we want to be able obviously to provide the density that we, you know, that we think is appropriate for a 55 plus kind of project. And we want to do that respectfully of the neighbors. And so we're in a site that's kind of pressured from two directions, if you will. From the growth from Northridge Road up, and then from the single family dwellings that are existing. I just point out for consideration that it's the back of our units, and it's the back of the 2-unit buildings, not the 3-unit buildings, that are actually adjacent to those single families. And there is a proposed landscape buffer. And it's, again, the back of our buildings that are, again, addressing the rear of the single family dwellings as well. So we're trying to be respectful. We felt that 2 stories, we felt garages were important, necessary, especially given the fact there's not a lot of room for off-street parking. But we felt that to do that and not put up 3-story attached units was more appropriate in our thinking to have a somewhat larger footprint than to have a taller mass in place on the site. So that was kind of the thinking, if that, you know, clarifies kind of the design intent here.
Yeah, Ron, and this is Fred. I kind of agree with you. I mean, this neighborhood is very diverse in types in its types of dwelling units. Everything from, as you said, single family to 4-story apartments and so forth and so on. Vivian grew up in the neighborhood. I have friends that live over there as well, familiar with the area very, very well. I live right down the road from there. But a few things that I think would help improve your project, or maybe questions I have first off. And one of the questions I have is, what is the depth of the driveway from the street to the garage? Is it enough for 1 car?
It's 20 feet. It's 20
20
feet.
feet.
And on the side, with
So
the side,
if I have an F-150 pickup truck, my bumper is touching my garage door, and my front bumper is touching the garage door, and my rear bumper is hanging in the street. You may want to look at that, because that could be,
Well, especially since
let me put it this way, there's examples of this in Howard County right now that are awful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Fred, especially since the sidewalk is on that side too. So if there's
Exactly.
a walkway and your truck is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Nick. And that's on that side of the street. On the other side, maybe it's not as big of a deal, because there's no sidewalk. But then the next question is, this is a private road, correct? It's not a county street or state street. So how is trash handled? How is snow removal handled? Where are visitors going to park if you've only got barely one car parking depth on the driveway? There's no on-street parking. And, again, there's examples of this around Howard County, and there's examples of this that are not even age restricted, that are single families, and it's an awful experience, in my opinion. So I'm a little concerned from that perspective. That said, maybe you can answer those questions for me. I don't know how trash is handled. I don't understand snow removal. I don't understand on-street parking.
okay, trash collection, the trash pickup will go inside the private street if it has a room to turn around. So as fire and rescue, obviously, that's why we have the cul-de-sac. So trash collection, there will be no central place for trash collection. It will be based on canisters, each in front of its unit. Snow
Okay.
removal will have to be done by the homeowner association because it's a private road. The county will not remove the snow from that road. As far as parking, each unit will have two cars in the garage and two in front in the driveway. So as far as the way parking is calculated in the zoning, and I understand completely what you're saying, and I agree with you. However, as far as the zoning, the calculation of parking per zoning, each unit has 4 parking spots, 2 inside and 2 outside. In addition to, we have maybe 7 or 8 in front of the community building. So in general, our calculation is we have 94 spaces versus 55 required. Now, I will add more space. I agree with you 100%. I will add more spaces in this parking spaces in this area. That will help with the overflow. As far as the driveway on the sidewalk side, the 20 feet is beyond the sidewalk. So we have a 5-foot sidewalk and another 20 feet for the driveway. Again, we look at the F150 example and see if we can give more room to those units. Okay.
Yeah, because like I said, Sam, there's places where this has been done in the county, and I just don't think they're successful at all. I think they're failures. Let me ask you, Vivian mentioned it. What is the purpose of the community building? Your 784 square foot community building. What is it? What goes on in there?
It's usually meetings for the presidents. That's the idea.
Okay. And then as far as, this is an age restricted community, and I don't know if you guys know, but Ridge Road has become a very highly walkable, nice experience for a lot of people at all hours of the morning, day, and evening.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if there's a way this community can connect, whether it would be via a sidewalk, whether it's a trail, and/or on your site. And I realize you've got some, as Nick said, you've got some constraints with environmentally sensitive areas, but I always understood that even in environmentally sensitive areas, you could potentially put in, pathways with mulch or whatever, so that the residents could have a place to walk on the property here. I mean, it looks like, there's a fair amount of land there, either tying in from the community center and around the backs of all the units, and then maybe back out to the road. I don't know. Architecturally, I think I'm not sure I agree with Vivian. I think some of the things that we encountered on some of the other age restricted properties are similar here, but the scale of your buildings is smaller than what we saw at Ilchester. I'm not 100% convinced on the density, but I don't think it's as bad as some of the other ones we've seen where it's just so tight, it just doesn't feel right, because as Vivian said, when you go to the west here, the development that's right there is very dense. They all are real rear loading townhomes, and they're all the scale is much larger. So I think that your scale and your proportions and your size of your units is okay. Density, I'm a little bit unsure about at this point. But I'd like to see you at least try and introduce some trails on the property, and maybe even a connection of those trails over to the community center. The other thing is, I live, as the crow flies, less than a half a mile from 70. And I swear the decibels coming from Route 70 on some nights or days, mornings even, wake me up. And this property is going to be right there. So, you know, and it says something here in what I received from Nick that the project's going to include an outdoor seating and picnic area and a noise wall for privacy. Where's the outdoor picnic and seating area? Number one, and number two, who's going to want to sit there with the decibels potentially at numbers that I'm sure are off the charts on that close to Route 70 at times. So, you know, it sounds good on paper, but in reality, is that really going to be used? And maybe you'd be better off doing some walking trails. I don't know. And then who constructs the sound wall? Isn't that the state?
No, I'm sorry. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Okay, the units, the townhome units, these 6 units will have a noise wall in the back, and we will be doing a noise study to make sure that those units, the backyard of those units will have acceptable noise levels. So there will be a noise wall in the back of those units.
I see it now. Yeah, I see it, Sam. I see it now that you blew it up. I see it. Okay.
Now, these units are, maybe this one also will need to have some kind of enclosure, something like this. But these units on this side, the building itself will act as a noise wall and will shield the backyard. You see, the criteria is for the backyard to have the acceptable decibel level.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you on the benches and the seating area. I mean, we probably maybe provide something here also to shield some of the noise. That will help. As far as the walking, there is a sidewalk now on Northridge, starts at this corner, goes all the way here. If we flip, based on the comments earlier, flipping the sidewalk on the other side, our sidewalk will stop here. However, from here all the way to here, there is no sidewalk. Mr. Gerges, he attended the community meeting, and he was very opposed to adding a sidewalk there. Some residents of the Ellicott Hills, the condominium community to the west, talked about providing a sidewalk that connects us to them. So some residents want the sidewalks, some residents don't. And at that time, we suggested contacting the county for this portion of the road. However, on our side, we will have to provide road improvements all the way to the edge of our property to this point, basically.
Can you do some sort of a trail through the environmentally sensitive area around the community, connecting the community center? You know, the people that live there could use.
We can add some kind of a trail all around here, but crossing the wetlands, we've had that discussion with planning and zoning before. The trail has to be paved. So yeah, like
and those are wetlands there. I can't see it.
Yeah, there is a stream here.
Okay.
There is a stream, and there are wetlands,
oh, yeah.
and there is a small, also maybe a floodplain. So yeah, it basically is it's difficult to add something going through this, especially with the floodplain.
Okay.
And I truly think that if people are gonna go walking, it makes, because it's kind of steep in this area. It's not comfortable to walk, especially with the woods, and there most likely will be a forest conservation easement over here to satisfy our forest conservation requirements.
Yeah.
So the walk will go up to Rogers Avenue and down to Ridge Road. most likely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that Ridge Road is a fairly nice walking experience. There's always a lot of people walking there. If there's a way to connect it, I don't know if that's feasible or doable, but it seems like you're that close. I don't have any other comments, Dan. I don't want to monopolize this. I think, Dan, you haven't made your thoughts known yet. Is that correct?
I haven't either.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I
Larry,
got mine.
Dan?
You gave yours, right, Dan?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Larry, you're the
Yeah,
last one I didn't.
I don't want to repeat a lot. I think it would be really great to have that sidewalk along Rogers Avenue connecting to North Ridge. I take that shortcut, from Walmart back to Rogers and to my house too. And there's always multiple people there, including today, walking there. And I think people living in this community would really enjoy having that connection. With regard to the community building, again, I don't know if this is a requirement of the zoning here, but if it is a meeting room, it would be nice maybe instead of the picnic tables that are just out, in the grass there, maybe there's a patio that's an extension of the community building, and then there might be some sort of privacy screen or something that helps, shield the noise. And just like on the prior project, they had a fire pit, that you would use it more than just for a meeting. I mean, sometimes they have community dinners or something, but it'd be really nice to have that amenity as an outdoor. Yeah, that's a better one to look at. So maybe it goes off of the east side of the building there. And then there is a big grassy area there. I don't know what other amenities, but horseshoe pits. I mean, things that don't really cost a lot that just give some activities for seniors or those over 55 would be nice. And I would really beef up that evergreen screen there that's between the community building and Interstate 70 to get that established. It's, as Fred said, it's not going to solve the problem completely, but it would help if you can't do any type of sound wall there.
Okay.
And the other thing is just make sure that these trees that you're talking about saving, like between like the front entrance and Rogers Avenue, that there's adequate protection for those during construction, because I've seen so many times that, yeah, it looks good on paper, but by the time the construction is over with, the major trees are dying and then you have nothing. And they look like they're really nice spruces and things there now. So hopefully that you can preserve that.
Okay.
And also, you mentioned a specimen tree area. Is that being obliterated for the community, or is the specimen tree area being preserved? I was unclear about that.
There are 4 specimen trees in this area that will have to be removed. There are some more that are in the back that are to be preserved.
Okay, so again, take adequate protection or give adequate protection to those so that they truly do survive. And 2 other comments on the architecture. There's a really narrow green strip between the 2 driveways. I mean, I guess maybe that helps meet green space requirements, but literally when something's like 3 feet wide like that, you're better off doing a decorative paver or something like that gives it a little bit of a special look. But, people, on a narrow driveway like that, they're going to be walking onto that grass. And I think it ends up being just kind of a muddy area. So I would look at those little fingers there as being maybe not necessarily green, because you can't really put a tree in something that narrow anyway. And so it'd be better maybe just to consider like a cobble paver or a permeable paver or something that's decorative that kind of accentuates the front. And with regard to the architecture, I know the developers probably has final say-so on that, but on these types of homes, when they're attached like this and there's 2-car garages, the garage is like it's in your face type thing. Everything else becomes secondary. That's what you see. So if you have to do it that way, consider doing garage doors that are more of a carriage house type garage door. I mean, it still could be a singular door, but they're made to look like, those are just kind of I don't know, builders grade garage doors there. Those garage doors could be so much nicer and more inviting in terms of looking like they're 2 doors that open up, even though it is one that still goes up, like the traditional garage door. But there's a lot of them out there. You see them even in the big box stores. They're really nice. And when people put them on their houses, it's really noticeable. And another way of helping that garage kind of recede is maybe considering putting, it's usually about a 2-foot wide trellis area, like that kind of frames the garage door. So it just puts the garage door like in a little bit of a shadow, and the actual decorative structure becomes more the feature rather than the garage door itself. And then, finally, hopefully some earth tones can be introduced into this color palette, because right now it's more of a gray monotone, so it's not, all that inviting. That's all my comments. Those are just things for the builder to
Good
consider
comments,
to
Larry.
make these houses more attractive.
Are you sure you're just a civil or a landscape architect?
Yeah, I guess I want to be an architect, but I definitely like it.
You've definitely been hanging out with too many architects too long.
Yeah, I think so too.
Comments. And actually, you made me realize there was one other thing I wanted to comment on that, again, examples of this throughout the county. When this is a private road, and this is a bit beyond the purview probably of our DAP, but are you required to do curbs or not on the street?
Yeah, we're doing a mountable curb, modified curb. Yes.
So a roll down curb?
Yeah, it's a mountable curb. It's
Curb and gutter?
modified curb and gutter. Yes, modified
Okay.
curb and gutter.
Okay, because I've seen some examples where they don't do any kind of curb, not even a roll down curb and gutter, and it's literally asphalt that then rolls into the driveway asphalt. And what happens is people pull off the edge of the road because there's no place to park when they have visitors. And so the edge of the asphalt meets up against the grass areas, and it's just all mud. It's
We have curb and gutter all around.
Yeah, because that way it helps with drainage and it defines the road better, and people tend not to pull off if there's a curb then.
I had
Okay.
just
Sorry.
one more comment on the retention basin or the bioretention area. Also, make sure you give that attention. I didn't look closely enough at the planting plan, but that can take on a more of a rain garden look and still function, what it's in terms of having the water penetrate into the ground. And, it could be planted with things like winterberry and swamp milkweed and things. And so it becomes a real amenity. It's right next to the community building, and even driving past it, to and from as you're going in and out of the community, it doesn't have to be just functional. It could definitely be a decorative item with not too much expense, because these are all native type plants that will flourish in a wet environment.
Yes, we'll do that. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Larry, it's Tim Burkhardt again. Hey, I do apologize. My video doesn't seem to be working properly. I just wanted to comment on some of your suggestions, and then most of them I think I agree with. The upgraded door situation, I think in the presentation, our doors aren't presented the way the current door that we have isn't. And we do use an upgraded door currently, but we would definitely consider, going to the carriage door because the garage door is so prominent. So
yeah,
I think that's a good comment. And we spend a lot of our time kind of designing the building per se. And your comments about the community building space, I think it's also pretty good with the patio and maybe some more passive, more active recreation space. And same thing with the little grass strip. I mean, yeah, that seems like it'd be better off in a concrete paver situation. So I think those are certainly suggestions that we can certainly take to heart.
Good.
Good. Okay. Is anybody on the DAP? Would you like to make a motion for any of the comments or things we talked about?
Yeah. Well, this is Larry again. I'd like to make the motion regarding the community building that the applicant take a look at how the outdoor picnic area might be really take on the feel of an outdoor patio that's an extension of the community building, with amenities like a fire pit and possibly horseshoe pit in the grassy areas to kind of beef up the recreational amenity package.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Vivian? Dan?
Aye.
Everybody says aye. Okay. Any other motions?
I'd like to make a motion that they make the driveways minimum of 24 feet instead of the 20.
Anybody want to second that? Aye. All those in favor? Aye. And I'd like to make a motion that the applicant also study, which is sort of a tag on to the motion that Larry made. The amenities in these type of communities are huge. So if you can look at maybe a pathway around the community as well, and or if there's a way to talk to the county and figure out a way to connect this community via sidewalk down to Ridge Road, it would, I think, really help and benefit you all in selling these units. So anybody want to second that?
I'll second it, Larry.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Vivian, Dan?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Any other motions? No. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Looks like it should be a pretty good little project. Appreciate you taking the time to present to us tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, do we still have our third applicant?
Yes, let me pull some of the folks in.
We're well on our way to breaking our all-time time limit.
Yeah. Well, starting late didn't help, but
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm gonna,
About that.
anybody need to take a piss stop, probably now's the time to do it. So I'm gonna be back in 1 minute.
Yeah, me too.
For the team that's presenting,
Anthony, I think you got me on here, but it should be Claire.
let's see. I have Claire in here as well. Let's see. Is she going to be presenting?
I'll be presenting, yes. I also need the ability to share screen.
Yep, that's what I'm doing right now.
Right.
So it should pop up for you now.
Okay. Should I switch to my camera?
No, we can see you guys all in the room together.
I'm right here. I'm the one in the front. Okay, great.
Yep. We can see you guys pretty clearly. It's a good camera.
Okay, great. Boy, okay. Now let's see if I can feed this. Great, it worked.
Are you all seeing the screen or?
Yep. Yep, we can see the screen.
Let us know when to start.
Once our panel returns, we'll get started.
Okay. We're all back. Okay. Great. All right. Guess you all are ready to finally present. Being last on the agenda tonight, you're a lucky spot. You all have been before this panel before, so you know the procedure. We'll introduce ourselves. and ask that you all introduce yourselves, make your presentation. DPZ will have a short presentation. The DAP will ask questions, and then we'll make motions. Appreciate you waiting for us this evening and taking the time to come in and present. I'm Fred Marino. I'm the chair, and I'm an architect. Dan?
Dan Lovett, civil engineer.
Larry? You're on mute, Larry.
Sorry, I'm Larry Quark, and I'm a landscape architect.
And Vivian?
Vivian Stone, architect.
Anthony?
Anthony Cataldo, Division of Land Development, Planning and Zoning.
And Nick?
Nicholas Haynes, Division of Land Development, Department of Planning and Zoning.
Great, thank you, everybody. Okay, we'll turn it over to the applicant if you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and please try to keep your presentation to 15 minutes or less. And then we'll go ahead and turn it over to DPZ after that. So it's all yours. Please take it away.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come back to you again this evening. Quick introduction. Let's start with Tanya on this side and then wrap them out with Clara, please.
Tanya Potter, Howard Hughes.
Joe Bailey, Studio Red Architects.
Gabe Chown, Howard Hughes.
Dan Sweeney, GLW. Don Brown, Schuler Rogers. Oh, good check, GLW.
Rick Kitchen, Howard Hughes.
Will Balger, Howard Hughes.
I'm Claire Augrey, Unknown Studio.
Okay, thank you. So please go right into your presentation.
Great. So again, appreciate the opportunity to come back again. Obviously, we received your comments from the last meeting. Really is a revised presentation to address a lot of the concerns and comments. With that said, why don't we just jump right into the presentation itself with Claire with Unknown Studio, officially the architecture firm, just to be clear.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Claire Augrey. I'm a landscape architect and I'm founder of Unknown Studio. We're a Baltimore-based landscape architecture practice. I'm doing quite a bit of work here in Columbia. We just finished up the concept plan for Symphony Woods and are doing some other work for Howard Hughes here in the downtown area. Just a quickest of recaps. You saw these renderings last time, and I think you have a good sense of the overall concept of the building, the kind of floating glass volume over the plinth of the parking and the situation of overlooking the lake and sitting along the current sidewalk to Whole Foods, which is the future alignment of Lincopen Street as the entire master plan gets built out. As a landscape architect, I'm going to be leading the public realm portion of the presentation tonight. I just want to sort of zoom out a little bit. We want to make sure everyone's very aware of the context. This historic photo is really compelling. First of all, just the origin of the lakefront itself. There are no natural lakes in Maryland, as you probably all know. So this is an entirely artificial feature, one that was created as the kind of marquee for the downtown lakefront. And one of the things I want to point you to, two things really. A is this remnant woodland, which is really indicative of the kind of rolling Piedmont woodlands that we see here in the area. And it's still there today. And the other is a little subtle, but just the grade change that we're dealing with here. So dealing with something on the order of 15 to 35 feet of grade change, which gives us real drama, but also provides some access and connectivity challenges, which we'll speak a little bit about tonight. Fast forward to just 10 years later or 12 years later, we see that context really amplified. We see the signature Gary building, which is of course the northern adjacency of our site, which is here, and then that remnant woodland still bordering the south part of the site, and you see the rest of the infill really coming in around it with the pier at its center. And then fast forward to today, the main things I want to highlight here, again, that woodland to the south, the Gary building to the north, and the existing ramp that navigates a pretty significant grade change. It's about 34 feet from the future Wincopen alignment or the sidewalk down to what really functions today as a trailhead down here at the parking lot. So that's just a little bit of context, just to look here again at where we were last time. I'm really going to focus on connectivity and the public spaces themselves and then the landscaping. So before we dive into the public space of the building itself, I just want to zoom out and put this in context. The parcel that we're really here to speak about is the MOB building, which is here. But of course, it works as an entire district. So just to flag a few things here on this diagram, in orange, we see the existing lakefront trail. and also the connection to the trail system, which runs up through the woods to the library and over to Symphony Woods, which all exists. In yellow is the location of the future steps to the lake. So we know that's quite a ways off, but as envisioned, the idea there is that that would be a fully ADA connection from LPP and future Wincopen Street all the way down to the lakefront path. Then here on the right, the zigzag that we see here, that's Bailey Park, which recently came online, and it's in red here also. It's a fully compliant ADA connection between the upper level and the lakefront, again, connecting to that barrier-free path. And then just to conclude here at the MOB, you see 2 lines in red. So we really see our access here. We see this public space is really up here, sort of an overlook of the lake. So you see a sort of terminus point, a blue connection, which is a stair. But then we also have an ADA connection from the existing trailhead to the lake itself. So I wanted to spend some time on this diagram just to talk about how circulation works as a system here. We're dealing with, as I mentioned, between 15 and 35 feet of grade change. So we're not going to solve ADA at every single access point along this entire frontage. There's choices, there's options, there's different ways of moving around. And that's just a kind of good urbanism to have lots of different ways to move around, achieving the spirit and the letter of the code. We put this diagram in here just to demonstrate what it would be to actually get an ADA compliant ramp on this parcel. So this parcel really has the steepest of grades between the upper and lower levels, again, 35 feet. You see here on the right-hand side of the slide, the Bailey Park ramp system, which is in, and that's an 8.3% ramp with landings and handrails. Works pretty well, but we only have 14 feet of grade. Over on our parcel here, you know, we show what it would look like if we were to do that same system. It would negate the ability to use this parking lot. It would interrupt the service of the Whole Foods building. And it's just frankly inconvenient. We don't think anyone would use it. Another idea would be to wrap the building. Again, it's taking people far, far out of their way. It's possible, but from a design perspective, we don't see it as a pleasant experience, and we wouldn't advise pursuing a direction like that. Okay, so back to our site, now that we have a sort of sense of connectivity in the entire precinct, we just wanted to come back to the kind of context of the site. From a landscape perspective and a public space perspective, this is a site which is really asymmetrical, and we want to think about it in the round. So on the south side is that woodland and the trail system, connectivity barrier-free up to Symphony Woods in the downtown area. On the right side is that wonderful urban context with the Gary building, and we have the lake, of course, to the east. So the site is very asymmetrical, and the building sits right in the middle. From a landscape and public space perspective, we're going to treat each facade and each frontage of that building very differently to respond to its context. The north terrace, and we're still looking at the primary public terrace being on the north side, we really consider as a kind of pier. So on the left-hand side, you see how people are using Lake Kit at the opening reception in '67, one person out on the lake, but then a lot of people just gathering for prospect and a chance to be at the edge. And that's really how we see this terrace being used. Just a reference image here on the right, the idea of this kind of public pier, a chance to get out and look over the water with connections from there. Here we are looking the other way. North is on the right of this exhibit, but standing up at the sidewalk, future Wincopen corridor, we have the building set to the south, and that really gives you this big open window to the lake. And that's really important in scale and also in relationship to the Gary building. It also makes this terrace really visible, which is important. As I mentioned, there is still a private terrace on the south side, and they'll have the luck of having this beautiful screen of woodland, and that's really nice, but it's not as visible. So for the public amenity, we really want it to be fully visible from future Wincopen Street and the sidewalk today. Rotating 90 degrees, now north is up. Just a summary of some of the public space amenities and assets here. I'll go into more detail on the planting palette and how we're sort of surgically getting planting in and around the building itself. But the main things I want to point you to here are just the sort of experience of the bridge connecting from a broadened sidewalk over here on the west side of the site, a public sidewalk which bridges over the existing ramp, which goes down here. And then we have a kind of transition from the kind of more sidewalk and public facing to a kind of warmer deck pier feeling here. And that's the main space that we'll talk about today. Last but not least, I'll talk a little bit about the improvements to the trailhead and the parking lot here and ADA compliant connections all the way down to the lakefront path and the screening and the view in the round. So today we're going to focus mostly on the east side and the north side. Just one more summary here in red. These are all ADA compliant connections. So if you're walking from the Whole Foods or from the parking lot, fully ADA connection onto the north terrace, into the building. And then again, from the lower level, if we drive down just like you do today, we've improved this parking lot and designated ADA spaces and brought in an ADA compliant connector that slides down here and takes us to the public path. So just as people do today, and you can see this gentleman down here in the image unloading his bike and getting ready to go for a loop, we still envision this lower level as a trailhead. It still needs to function as service for the Gary building, but it will have a much improved experience as part of the public realm as well. From the upper level, this is a view of coming across that bridge in this kind of nice open space with prospect to the lake. You don't see the lake from Wincopen, you don't today and you won't in the future, but you get that sense of the kind of void out in front of you. From material perspective, we're doing a really simple picket rail with a wood top. We'll talk a little bit more about the wood decking here in the midground. And then we're kind of playing with two different tones, both kind of warm and textured paving with a low albedo factor with the decking in the kind of midground, and trying to kind of create a very warm, textured, human scale feeling for the public realm of this building. There's a few opportunities for art. They could be very different. It's a little early to really commit to one, but I'll just sort of go through some of the early ideas. At that lower parking lot, we could see it as a really great opportunity for some really charismatic street paint or work of art in the flats. And then on the terrace itself, it could be a great potential for a lighting art piece or a kind of iconic signature vertical piece that really shows people this is a gateway to a public space. And here are those three locations. So location one would be at the pedestrian bridge coming from the future Wincopen, today the parking lot. Number two would be at the stair tower at the end, which faces east, which really draws you to the end. And then the third would be at the lower level at the trailhead itself. Just a little more detail about the decking. This is a north-facing terrace, and so the light levels are going to be really changed throughout the year. It's also not that big. The primary part of the public space on this terrace all in is really just about 4,000 square feet. So not a huge space. And so we wanted to get the most texture, the kind of contemporary texture and feel in that small space, and also allow for flexibility. So these images on the left, just some of the greatest public spaces in the United States, simple, flexible, using soft human scale materials, playing with the grain of the wood. And that's what we're doing here. So this sort of carpet of beautiful decking within the terrace itself becomes the primary gathering space. And we think that's important to have that flexibility. This is a very flat, flexible, kind of human scale at that 3,400 to 4,000 square feet. And the idea here is that the owner would be able to flexibly program this year round. And because of the seasonality of the site, that's something that it can really change from season to season. Again, for scale, this is not a huge space. And you see on the left-hand image here, a yoga class for a dozen people, or an aerobics class for another dozen people. So we're not talking about big festivals out here as much as we're talking about small book fairs or small events. And then on the everyday, you can see kind of what it would feel like with 24 people on the terrace. So it's kind of a small scale, and we want it to feel really pleasant and human and warm. We're currently studying configurations of some planters that would go on the terrace itself. So the configurations are going to adapt once we get a little bit further along. We understand exactly what the doors and the egress are going to be on the north side, but in a similar material palette, looking at sustainable wood, a kind of modular seating form, and then we really want to play up the color on this part of the terrace. So using some sort of select here seasonal ornamental grasses that are adapted for our climate that really bring some color, especially love the pink muhly grass as a way of warming up the space. This is what it looks like right now at the kind of pier level or terrace level, looking out at the lake. And this is the scale that it would be once we're really on the easternmost side of the pier itself and you're starting to descend to the stairs. So that's this area here. And then tucking seating, kind of a nice scale of seating, integrating the planting along the building side. Here we are looking back up. So this is the extension of the Gary building, so a later addition, and you see that 35-foot grade change and the ramp going down. We're standing on the lakefront path itself here. And then here it is, here's the elevation zooming out to the lake level. I'll talk a little bit about the green screen here in a moment. The lakefront path exists in the foreground, and then the connector. We're interplanting between the connector and the lakefront path. We have about six new trees going in there as well to kind of add to the kind of woodland character. And then we see the woodland here on the left-hand side of the image. Oh, and I'm sorry to mention also the stair, which we've really made a kind of grand gesture. So it's not just an egress stair, it's really this kind of nice urban feature that connects the terrace down to the lakefront. Here we are on the lakefront path looking north. So we see the Gary building, we see the kind of existing condition. And then here's what it would be in the future. So people using that path along the lakefront, and then this is the ADA connection taking us up to the improved parking lot trailhead. Here's the scale of the stair. And then on the left-hand side of the image is the screening of the parking structure on the eastern side. I'm going to take you through this corner of the building in 3 seasons. So you see some of the new plantings that we would suggest between the improved trailhead over here and the new connector, which would come in also with benches, updated bike racks, and some delineated area for mixing for people to unload and drop off. And then here we see where the building turns the corner. We're introducing a cable system with a native vine palette that also turns the corner. So this is what I was saying about the building being very asymmetrical. When we're on the lakefront side and you're going along that path, of course, you know there's a building there, and we're not going to ever camouflage the building and the structure so that people don't think it's there anymore. But we want to introduce great native habitat, pockets of nature. There was some great quote I found from Jim Rouse about feeling the spaces of nature as part of everyday life. And that's what this sort of screen on the eastern side of the building really does, and then just wraps the corner just a little bit. The north side of the building, we've left that structure completely open. And that's intentional because the experience of being inside the structure should also be orienting, and we want to get light and we want to get green. We don't want to just disguise the entire structure and cover it all up with cladding. Here it is in the fall. When the light gets a little lower and these vines start to bronze up, we're looking, as I mentioned, at a native palette that are perennial and are deciduous. So they really will change season to season, and we think that's a good thing because this is my favorite season. Everything's golden and really beautiful. And then in the winter, these vines are going to lose their leaves, and we're going to see the woody vines going up the trellises, and we're going to get tons of great light bouncing off the lake into the garage. And because of the turn up of the wall all around, we're not worried about seeing headlights or glare. You're just going to see this kind of glistening of the vines on the east side of the building. This is a pretty standard detail for landscape architects, pretty popular detail. We see it all over the world, but here are just some examples locally showing what it looks like on some different conditions. We like that it's a little bit asymmetrical, that it's seasonal, that it changes over time, and the light conditions are going to have the vines growing different ways across the facade of the building. We like that dynamic nature. And then in terms of the planting itself, we're looking at an all-native palette that offers habitat value and seasonality and screening, and also rapid growth. So the bignonia in particular, for the landscape architects on the panel, you know this one, flowers, and it can go 20 to 30 feet in 1 year and up to 50 feet. So we don't have concerns about getting coverage on the building, and it'll be a kind of question of, do we want to manage it at all or just let it go? Looking back at the lake, this is just another zoom in of the improved parking, the improved trailhead parking. It meets grade right now for ADA, but it's not delineated in any way. So we've added designated ADA parking spots for the trailhead so people can continue to use it today, but now it's really designated for ADA use. And it has a direct connection to the south into the lowest level of the parking deck, where there's also designated ADA spaces. And that's open to the public. So anyone can come down and use this lower level or the trailhead as a lakefront access point. As I mentioned, there's some improved furnishings and benches. And we like this detail a lot, that the vines wrap the corner just at this moment, and then it opens up to the north light into the structure. In plan, this is just a little summary of that area. So the 2 designated spaces here in red, and then you see the ADA route going down. This is the new path connector that takes us to the existing lakefront path on the east side of the building. So lastly, just going west, this is a kind of overview of the entire North Terrace design. Here you see that 4,000 square foot deck framed with our concrete paver, all kind of warm and textured tones, the railing, that kind of for the overlook. And then we have sort of a surgical approach to planting on the west side. So putting in these pockets of understory flowering trees, and also we have east facing slopes here, so some more mid and overstory trees. And that gives us an effect, a really layered effect from the sidewalk or the future Winkopen corridor, of just a kind of screening of beautiful seasonal vegetation between us and the MOB. So a nice layering effect and nice seasonal color. This is a preliminary plant palette, but these are all really tried and true plants that can handle an urban condition and also provide a lot of habitat value and seasonal color, even in the dead of winter, which of course is super important for any urban condition, and also a lot of habitat value, as I mentioned. I hope I kept to the 15 minutes. I tried, and we're looking forward to your questions and to hearing some of your comments. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the thorough presentation. I'm going to start out with Larry, since you are resident landscape architect tonight. You have any comments or questions, Larry?
Yeah, just a couple. I mean, good comments in regarding. I love the focus on the native plants. That's great, especially at the lake edge there, and that's something that Jim Rouse would have definitely promoted. I do think the vines maybe do need to be managed a little bit. I mean, maybe it's just some of the renderings. It's almost looking like the vine is
Hey, Larry.
Building.
Larry, excuse me, Larry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I apologize to everybody. We're supposed to first have DPZ comments, and then we'll go into our
Okay.
comments and questions.
Okay,
I apologize.
yeah. Okay,
Over to
fine.
you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I can keep this sort of brief. But this quick history on the project. The panel saw this September 1st this year, so a little over a month ago. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the project, its location. It's in the, immediately south of the, Whole Foods building, the new proposed 4-story building and 2-story parking garage. This is really, it's a refinement sort of what they presented at that meeting. As the applicants presented. I mean, I think they did a good job of showing the improvements that they have proposed for the project. If the panel could please just make recommendations and comments on the transitions and edge treatments of this refined design. Does this new design, does it enhance and provide for better pedestrian connections to the surrounding area? Do the proposed landscaping updates do they enhance the design and provide necessary screening and accentuations of the proposal? And do the improvements to the terrace and pedestrian stair, do they create a stronger, more pleasant pedestrian connection and to the surrounding area? Do these refinements really tie the area together? I mean, those are the sort of maybe the focal areas that planning and zoning would like the panel to focus on this evening.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Sure.
Sorry, Larry. So back over to you.
Yeah, okay. I probably should have started out by saying that this presentation was better than the one that we heard before because it gave more the context of the area. I was not aware of what was planned on the south side of the building regarding another connection. And then I was aware of the handicapped accessible ramp system on the, I guess it's the north side of Whole Foods, but that really wasn't brought up last time. So it makes sense that if someone does need to get down to the lake and they want to go via a wheelchair or a walker or whatever, they can use those access points. But back to the planting palette, I was just saying that I appreciate the attention to the native plantings. I think that's appropriate here. A little bit concerned about the trellis system that sometimes maybe it's just the way it's rendered, but I kind of like the, well, I love the clean contemporary lines of the building, and I'm hoping that the framework for the trellises could sort of take a little bit more precedence, and then the vines could still be on it without it looking quite so wild. But that's just my, personal opinion on that, and it might just be the way it's rendered. The only other comment I would have is on the pier type, I guess, design that is being proposed for the North Terrace, and I do like the textured wood and how that is defining the ground plane. But I still am concerned. I was there today, and the view of the Whole Foods building is great, except for the loading dock area. So I know you had indicated that there is some sort of focal point that might be proposed as you first come across that ramp. So I don't know if there's a way of making that more sort of arcade-like or whatever, so that your attention is taken away from the fact that as you walk onto the pier, that right to your left is, trucks unloading things. But I just bring that up as an area of concern, that maybe that's a place where we could have some sort of vertical element that takes your attention away from that view. But as far as sort of the pier type design, I think you're successful in that. I hope there are seating areas, because it's not Coney Island or whatever. It's an area where, if you're waiting for someone, it would be nice to have a pleasant seating area along the, the side areas of the pier-like plaza that you're proposing. And I think that's it. I mean, I think it's an improvement, and I do understand the concept better this time. And so I appreciate the additional images that were supplied.
Okay, thanks, Larry. How about Dan? Any comments? Dan?
Not really. Other than I'd like to say thanks for connecting up these for the pedestrian traffic to flow a little bit better than what was given before. I don't know if putting in an elevator on the deck so handicap could access from the terrace down, if that's a possibility or not, or if that was looked at. The other thing would be because the terrace is on the north side of the building, it's not going to get a whole lot of sunlight. So just make sure whatever plants that you put in the planter boxes can handle that less sunlight. That's probably about my only comments.
Okay, thanks. Vivian, any comments?
Not really. I'm still, I guess, a little concerned about the screening of the parking area on the lakefront during the winter. I guess I would have to see an example of that. I'm not quite sure how nice that's going to look when there's no vegetation growing on it. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Vivian. So I'm going to reiterate my colleagues' comments. First off, thank you very much for taking more of a macro to micro sort of approach to your presentation, discussing the landscape and the pedestrian experience, which is, as we all know, of major concern and thoughts along the lakefront here. None of us want this experience to be something that is not an experience that people can enjoy, all days, all nights, and so forth. And our concern is obviously with an office building here versus some of the other uses, and a parking garage that faces the lakefront and the pathway there. Is it really going to wind up being a space and an experience that people would want to use? I agree with my colleagues, and I still feel the same way that I don't think that the experience although I can appreciate the concept of the so-called pier down towards the lake, I don't think that experience looking down into a service area is going to be as successful, not to mention it's on the north side of the building. One of the other things you mentioned, Claire, was the south side of the building. And one of the things we talked about last time, and I didn't even hear just now when you started the sort of macro to micro description of the pedestrian experience and so forth, is the attention to the master plan and how your building could be master planned to engage what might be happening and is suggested in the master plan on the south side of the building. All you said was that it's a beautiful wooded experience. And okay, and if you look at the master plan, there's quite an event that's going to happen to bring people from Copen Circle and I forget the name of that street there that comes down from the mall, Columbia Mall Road, that sort of dead ends into the lakefront. That yellow area, so the master plan of your building and how that might be thought of on that side of the building relative to all the things you talked about, and how in the future, when that yellow space does get developed, how your building is going to receive that. And we didn't hear any of that. So that was one of the comments we made last time. We even made the comment, would it be better to flip the terrace concept or experience and study it on the south side of the building as much as you're studying it on the north side? And other than that, I think I also agree with Vivian, or somebody said it a minute ago. I like the concept of the building floating, but when I see it floating and I see, a parking garage underneath it, and at different times of the year, all I'm going to see are a bunch of cars in there, I'm not so convinced of the floating concept. I mean, I think it's kind of elegant, it's kind of nice architecturally, but we had some concerns about how and what you do on those lower levels to make that a nicer feel, nicer experience. And even all of those vines, they take a great many years to grow up to that maturity. I'm not a landscape architect, but I know the ones I've seen, they don't take off immediately. It takes many years. Luckily, that's facing east, so it should, I guess, help the growth occur quicker. But then again, looking at one of your renderings, not so much this one, but the other one, it looked like you had it so densely landscaped along the pathway along the lakefront. I'm not so sure any sunshine would even ever hit. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, those are some of the comments we had last time. But again, I do appreciate you sort of taking this more macro down to micro approach of explaining circulation, pedestrian experience, landscape, and how the landscape and the architecture work together and integrated together. But I think we're still having some of the same concerns with I'll call it the pier, you called it, and the experience of looking down into a service drive with trucks and, trash trucks and so forth and so on. And then also on the south side of your building. I think that's probably a pretty nice view over there. And unfortunately, we didn't hear anything about that, what you're doing over there. I think you made mention that there may even be a terrace over there, but we didn't hear or see anything about it. So those are sort of our comments. I'm sitting here looking at the motions we made last time. And as I said, I think you tried to address most of them, but there's a few that are still open, and we still have some of the same concerns. And I'm sorry, I kind of rambled on there. Didn't really have any questions. I think one of the things we talked about last time too, were there other opportunities for what you could do for the screening of the parking garage other than the landscape, and I'm not seeing that here in our motions. Although we did talk about how the plan regarding the landscape and pedestrian experience, circulation on all sides of the building, how it connects to the lakefront to make it a better experience for everyone along the lakefront and inside the building. And I think that you're kind of trying to address that here with your renderings. But as somebody said, and I said a minute ago, what happens to that, to those vines in the off seasons in this part of the country, and what happens in the many years that go on before it even reaches this level of maturity? And then Larry, you made a comment that you thought it seemed a bit wild, I think you said.
Yeah, it just seemed to be a little bit overwhelming, because the building has such clean, crisp lines.
Right.
So that was my comment there.
Yeah, and maybe that's why it's kind of, I'm not convinced, because I agree with you. I think it's a very elegant structure and designed very well, and I like how it sort of floats. But then when I see that it floats over a parking garage, and is there a better way to screen that? I don't know.
Well,
Anyway, those are our comments. What's that?
One of the things I had mentioned last time, and I'm not saying this is the answer, but I was impressed with the overpass over Route 29, where it goes from, I guess, the Oakland Mills to connects to the lake, and they built the arch. Maybe it's just chain link fabric or whatever, but they took the time to do the details of the blue and green kind of intertwining, and so from the highway it looks really nice. I mean, and then it's lit up at night. So I was wondering whether some sort of panels that were sort of open, trellis-like, that had art incorporated into them might be a better way to screen that parking garage and still let light penetrate into that area. Again, I'm not trying to design it, because I don't even know if I'm communicating my idea. I'm just saying that there's ways of using open mesh type structures that may have art incorporated into them in terms of just simple forms or whatever. Maybe it's cattails or something like that.
Have you seen the one? Have you seen the one that is over on just off of Little Patuxent and what is that? Where Merriweather is? There's the parking garage over there. There's sort of a public art on the facade, and that's a parking garage.
I mean, that's really brightly colored, but it's that type of thing. Yeah.
Similar concept though, because when you look at it, even though it is brightly colored and it's different than I think we're talking about here, the concept is the same. It's intended to be create something nicer than it might otherwise be.
Yeah,
and
it has an artistic flair to it.
And it's going to be there all year, 365 a year. It's not like vines here, which I'm not convinced. Anyway, those are some comments, and I appreciate you all coming back and presenting to us. Does anybody care to make a motion? Or is there any feedback from the presenter? I guess maybe let me ask the question. I made mention, and I think Claire, you actually said there is a terrace on the south side of the building. Is that correct? I didn't. Okay.
It is, yeah. It would be a tenant access terrace, and so they would basically have the screening of the existing woodland in the short term, and then in the long term they would be overlooking the steps to the lake, as you mentioned. So
does that run? Does it run continuous like it does on the north side, or is it just per lease space?
It's not publicly accessible. Let me just run to the plan here quickly. It's not publicly accessible, but it runs the entire southern length of the building, and we're looking at a paver system. No planting on there because you have acres and acres of woodland just to your south. So you get an incredible view from those leased spaces on the south side of the building, and then you have this spill out terrace on the south side of the building, which you see here.
So the north more public, the south more private, more sedate on the south side, the north more public and more active. And then at some point in the future, is there any thought, obviously not on the terrace level, but on the lower levels of the building, of how the building might then integrate to what might be the connection down to the lake from Wincopen Circle and I forget what that's called, Mall Drive or whatever it is across the street. So in other words, you come down, if you look at the master plan, right, and you go north of that yellow area you're defining, there's that road up there, which is a visual and vehicular, well, we wouldn't want it to be vehicular, but it's a visual connection down to the lake. And in the master plan, it acknowledged that. And I'm just wondering how the building then sort of, at least is now planned to weave that space into the building, as opposed to it being an afterthought then. Was there any thought to that?
Our thought was that the building itself, really the interior planning, depending on the future plans happening to the south, we'll adjust accordingly, you know, just like the way how we see kind of like the interior plans being organized around, you know, if there's a lake view, for example, maybe, you know, this is a medical office building after all. So, you know, the interior layout will be oriented in such a way that, you know, we can see some of the floor, some of the uses facing the lake will be waiting areas, et cetera. Depending on what happens on the south side eventually, I think that's where, you know, some of the orientation could happen. And again, as Claire mentioned before, the terrace itself, I think will change and adapt over time, depending on the, you know, how the space on the first floor, level 1 rather, is subdivided over time. You know, we really see that kind of, you know, kind of a connection, if you will, visual connection, or to the, you know, connection to the eventual, you know, plan to the south to be adjusted over time as well.
If I could, I just wanted to just make sure I was clear on 2 points. I think it was Larry, and I'm looking back at my screen here, on the vines. Let me go back to my vines. So the vines are on a cable system. So until they're grown up, you're going to have this beautiful lattice work of the cable on the entire east side of the building. And then in terms of the kind of wildness or the seasonality, I just wanted to make sure it was heard. The vines that we've spec'd, Bignonia in particular, they go 20 to 30 feet in 1 year. So we're not worried about years and years and years until we get coverage in any way. If anything, it's more what you're saying, Larry. It's a kind of question of maintenance.
Yeah, just that, yeah, so
How much
a managed look, yeah. I'm not saying a real formal clipping, but just, you know, looking at it each year to make sure that it's just not becoming overwhelming.
Totally agreed. So I just want to make sure that from a landscape perspective, the question would be more your concern, Larry, versus worrying that they're going to grow. They're sitting at the bottom of a swale, they're east facing, they're going to get plenty of water. So they're going to cover it. It's just a question of, do we want to keep it in check a little bit? So I think that's a great point. I just wanted to make sure that the growth rate was understood. And then just the last thing on the seasonality, you still will have character in the winter, which is what we were trying to get at with this rendering. You'll have the woody form of the vines. They're a woody vine, they're deciduous. You're still going to have the cable. So you'll have a sort of lattice. You can have lighting incorporated with that. But we definitely like the idea that we have 4 seasons. It changes. It's not always the same 365 days a year. And that in the winter, you're going to have all this great light bouncing off the lake through the east side of this structure. You're not going to see the headlights because of the turn up wall. So I just, there's a little bit of complexity with the vines and the way we thought about it from a kind of 365 4-year kind of approach. And we think that makes it actually more dynamic. So I just wanted to speak for that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Claire, how much did you say? Oh, sorry, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to say, I think just the winter rendering doesn't really show the structure of the vines, but I know what you mean, Claire. I mean, even like on the Baltimore Beltway, the sound barriers there, I mean, those change too. I mean, you can see the structure of the vines climbing on those walls, and then in the spring and summer, they're completely green walls, and then now this time of year, there's sort of reddish leaves on it. So I understand that. I think just that this rendering doesn't show much of the winter structure of the vines, so that it's almost looking like they're not there at all.
Maybe Larry, you can help me on this. How are the vines growing up in between the spaces? So you know where they have the windows in between, or you're putting some kind
can
of
explain it, but it's a wire mesh. They're pulled wires, creating kind of a trellis-like. I think they're like just stainless steel cables, aren't they, Claire? Or
It's exactly right. Yeah, it's a stainless steel. Oh, I'm sorry. There it is. You got it. Here we go. So it's a stainless steel cable system that's mounted to the exterior of the structure. So we're currently looking at a spacing of about 8 inches, and that's totally variable. We can play with the detail of that. We can have it crisscross. We can have it lighted, like you're saying, for the overpass. But the cable in and of itself is really beautiful. So if you've been to the High Line and you know they're kind of diamond mesh, that's that cable system. We were thinking initially here to have it kind of be a strictly vertical, so that when it's not competing with the vines, but that's kind of an open design question. But when the leaves fall and they are deciduous, you will still see that beautiful stainless steel application on the outside of the building.
Yeah, and I think that's what was not coming through in the rendering.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. I mean, it's really hard to render that. You're going to render it with the growies on it, but you're not going to see the stainless steel as much as you would in reality, especially if they're that closely spaced at 8 inches, or you all come up with some sort of other pattern that you decide to do as opposed to just straight vertical.
Mm-hmm.
It could be quite elegant, actually.
Right.
Okay, I see it. Yeah.
It's so small here. This is the Jakob system. I'm
Yeah.
sure the architects here are also familiar with it. So we can play with the hardware and the geometry.
Yeah. I think that's going to be key, because it will really add to the elegance of the overall design of the building and the feel of the architecture. So that even when you're not seeing, in the wintertime, when you're not seeing the vine growing on there, you'll still see the elegance of the stainless steel web or structure you're going to be designing.
Right.
Okay. I don't have any. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or a motion anybody care to make?
I just have the one motion that the west end entry to the pier be looked at in terms of, Claire, you had shown some artwork or whatever, and which was very attractive, but if somehow art could be incorporated to help screening the views of the loading dock area, I think that would be worth considering. I think it's the right direction, the west entry onto the pier. Yeah, the middle one, I'm not sure if that's mounted onto a wall or whether it could be like on both sides of the walkway in order to kind of get your attention off. You'd be sort of funneling people through that space and then opening up, and kind of a Frank Lloyd Wright thing, like at Falling Water, where you're in these narrow space and then it opens up, boom, to a volume of space, which would be the pier. So that's kind of a convoluted motion, but I'm just asking that the applicant study the possibility of some vertical element at the west entry to the pier to help screen the loading dock area.
So that would be running east-west on the edge of that pier, Larry? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the zone we've defined to study. The artist would, I'm sure, have thoughts on this. But I think that's what you're saying, Larry. We had this sort of the idea of like a blinder a little bit, kind of directing us eastward here.
Right, and I don't know what form that could take, but I think the potential of using artwork like the middle one that had the light title underneath it, somehow that could be incorporated into it or something similar. I think it could effectively take your attention off the fact that you're crossing over a sort of a more utilitarian functional area.
Mm-hmm. I'll second that. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll go with that description that somehow I don't see visually looking down into that loading area as being a great experience. So if there's a way to resolve that by doing something along that edge, I don't know what it is.
Right.
I would second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Vivian, Dan, agree? Okay. Any other motions, anybody? No. Could you go back, Claire, to one other thing I meant to bring up before? Go back to the I think it was a rendering you had showing access to the loading area from the ground. And it's how, keep going back, how people access the trailhead, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Trailhead, and I didn't quite understand. Go back. Now it was actually a rendering showing the loading area and how people. There you go. So yeah. So how do people get down into that loading area? Go back. In other words, it looks like people are walking out of the loading area down onto the lakefront here, and I didn't understand how they're getting down into that loading area unless they're walking around Wincopen Circle there below grade around the loading area. Is that
so they're just like they do today? They're driving down the existing ramp. So the building, the building sits over the existing ramp. So they're driving down and using this as a trailhead, or they're taking the elevator down through the building, and there's a large gateway here in the lowest level of the parking structure, or they're driving and parking in the lowest level of the parking structure.
So would there be public parking in that loading area?
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
and that's
limited amount of vehicles, but there is some parking. Okay.
that's right. That's right. And the lowest level of the parking structure is also it's open to the public.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, having said that, I always was looking at this area as more of a loading area, not necessarily what you just said. So maybe maybe it's a different experience.
It's
Go
going to
ahead.
function the same way it functions today. So Whole Foods has their load, there's parking, there's surface parking there.
Yeah, you know, this is something that we did talk about internally quite a bit. Obviously, we're creating a medical office, you know, building a medical office building here. Majority of our visitors will be coming in from the surface parking lot, probably. You know, it is a big concern of ours. The good news is that Howard Hughes Corporation also owns the Whole Foods building, have a great partnership with Whole Foods, not only in Columbia, but around the country as well. We are, you know, from an operations team side, you know, we're in constant, you know, kind of like coordination with them. And we'll be no different. We'll be even more attuned as we build and develop this medical office building so that the deliveries are coordinated, so that we don't have trash trucks coming in necessarily in odd times during the day when the medical office building is in full occupancy, if you will, right? So we are already talking to them about when deliveries happen, very early in the morning or very late in the evening. You know, certain times of the day that we just won't have trash trucks coming in, you know, and Whole Foods wants to be a good neighbor, you know, because they also want to see this project to be there, you know, to be constructed over here. They also want this to be successful because that's a source of potential revenue for them as well. As visitors come and, you know, drop their loved ones off at the doctor's office, they go next door to Whole Foods and buy stuff and get a coffee or something like that. So again, this is from an operational standpoint, it's something that we're very, very interested in.
Just my computer's at 1% because it's been on this tap call. I'm gonna plug in.
Yes.
But I think other people, just in case you lose my feed for 1 second.
Okay.
Well, I don't know that we have any other motions. It sounds like we're done making motions. Team, the rest of the DAP, anybody? No?
Can you also hear me?
The only other question I have is if this is a trailhead and there's parking on both sides, is there going to be the opportunity for someone to come into that lot and then easily turn around and head back out if all those spaces are filled?
Here I am.
I don't know if they heard your question, Larry.
The question I had is if this lot is going to be a trailhead, as you explained, which I think
I'm
is
sorry,
a
guys.
good idea. Oh. Can I don't know if she can hear me. Can you hear me, Claire? Or?
We're back. I'm sorry, my computer was exhausted, but we're fine. We're good. We're here.
Yeah, just a quick question. If someone is coming into that lot, it's a trailhead, and they're just letting somebody off or whatever, is there going to be an easy way for someone to turn around and head back out if all the parking is filled? I couldn't tell whether there's a turning radius there or a space like a tail where you can back in and then head back out.
Yeah, the way we have it designated right now. Sorry.
I was just going to say, because the parking lot's a lot smaller, after you build this building. It's just, right now, when I drove down there today, I was able to easily, go down one bay and come back out the other. But now it's just one travel lane that kind of dead ends.
Yeah, we have the turnaround at the end, and then we need to, where we have the green here, that's the sort of designated striped area. So that could be used for a turnaround, or we could kind of have a T turnaround at the end. I think all of those are very good.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other comments.
Yeah, neither do I. Dan, Vivian, anything else?
I was just going to say, is there anything back from the old minutes that we still want them to follow up on?
Oh, well, I think when I just went through them, it seemed like they attempted to address them, and at least, when we asked the questions just now, I'm okay with the responses, and I think Larry has one motion, that he just made, and if they can just go back and take a look at that one item, and I think that, I don't know about you all, but I didn't quite realize what the intent of that reduced parking slash service receiving area was to be, and it's a dual function that could be a great amenity for folks wanting to get down there and park there and get to the lake, right? As a so-called trailhead, but I don't know who, if it was Gabe or somebody said, they're gonna have to really work closely with Whole Foods to make sure you don't have trash trucks driving down there in the middle of the day, or delivery trucks or whatever, because then there's a real conflict. But and I think Larry makes a valid point on taking a look at that parking area and how you do turn around and how that really functions. Because I can bet you on a beautiful Saturday, that parking lot's going to be packed and people are going to drive in there and get stuck and have to figure out a way to turn around and get out. I don't know if there's a way to connect and do a loop and connect it back to the, and I don't even know if it's at the same grade elevation, the lowest level of the parking garage.
Yeah, the parking.
I don't know.
The parking garage is accessible there. So actually on Saturday, when there's, beautiful Saturday, when nobody's using the medical office building, there'll be twice as much public parking as there is today.
Okay, there you go.
But if they have access to the parking garage, don't they have access to the building?
No, the building could be closed, but the parking garage would still be accessible.
Okay.
Okay, well, if there's no other comments, no other motions, I thank you for making and taking the time and waiting for us for nearly 3 hours here. We all appreciate hanging in there, and it's going to turn out to be a great project, I'm sure of it. And it helps, Claire, you taking the time to walk us through the details. We're all architects, and we all question the details sometimes, and it makes much more sense when we get to hear from the sort of the macro down to the micro and how you got to where you are, because we're not as closely tied to these projects as you all are working on them day to day. So thank you all. And I think, Anthony, you all are still on, so you've got the one motion that we made, and I don't see any reason that they need to come back with this project at this point, just taking into account that one motion we made. Anthony, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
We're here.
And Nick, great. All right, well, thank you all very much again, and good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye. Nick, I noticed we have a couple of other items on the agenda.
We do. Yep, they should be quick though, I think.
Okay.
Famous last words though.
Yeah, you just jinxed us, Anthony.
Yeah.
By the way, I got your voicemail too. I'm sorry, I was
good.
racing to get home today, and
Yep, no worries.
okay, so you have Sujit. Is he leaving us?
I'm
So
trying.
Yep, so hang on for 1 second. I think people are trying to duck out. So Sujit hit the end of his second term. So
Looks like, okay. It's like Claire's still on.
I think it's just us.
You'll still see Claire's
you're
name.
right.
I don't know if that, yeah.
hang on for one. But yes, so Sujit hit the end of his second term with the panel. So according to our rules of procedure, we have to look for a replacement. So unfortunately, and at the last meeting he wasn't able to attend, so unfortunately we weren't able to sort of thank him in person. But if you, in your day-to-day or in doing your review with the panel, if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear them. So certainly send them along to me, and then we can pass those along to the county executive's office as they begin the search for a replacement panel member.
Okay.
Anthony, would we be looking for an architect, or because Suja was an architect, right?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, I think we still have the mix of people that are required on the panel. So it can certainly be an architect replacement. I don't know if there's a certain number. We wouldn't be down any because we still have landscape architect, planner, and architects representing the panel. So so I think it certainly could be, I think, any of the professions because we aren't down any. So
okay,
just has to be a Howard County resident.
Yep.
Not just, but yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Well,
so that was that.
I'll ask around of any colleagues and see if we can get some interest.
Yeah, I will too.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, and then there was another item called Spin Scooter Hub Design Review. I don't know what that is. I'm dying to hear this one.
Oh God.
So, and I'll let Nick take over more because he's more in the weeds on it. But we are certainly going to start seeing spin scooters and perhaps even other scooter providers start to make their applications and start redlining plans to place their equipment in and around projects. And it's not something that we thought rose to the level of needing every spin scooter or every scooter location to come through the panel.
Yeah.
We certainly have enough guidelines present in our manuals to help direct them, but we wanted to just make sure that we were touching base with the panel to see if there were any specific guidelines or items that you wanted us as staff to be aware of as we're reviewing them. So in most cases, I think, and Nick, again, correct me if I'm wrong, in any and or most cases that they're in the public rights of way, they would be falling within that sort of that utility zone where there would be benches or trees or sort of outside of the pathways for sure. Nick, did you have specific, I can't remember if you had a specific example that you wanted to run through with them just to make sure we were hitting all the high notes on it.
No, I mean, that really sums it up. I have the like sort of, I would call it architecture, but basically what the hubs will look like. The idea would be that they would sort of match what the county is currently doing, like the bicycle racks and the electric bikes that we have stationed around at some of the county locations and stuff like that. In every case, though, they would be being designed mainly through the red line process to the existing site development plans, but they would all be in accordance with the design guidelines, both for downtown lakefront and the various areas where they would be going. I mean, I think the majority of them are sort of going to be focused down in the Columbia area. In certain cases, they would be allocated to like other outlying areas. I know the first one I think they're looking at is going in at the Gateway building, the county facilities there to be used, sort of in that surrounding area. I envision it's probably mostly for folks zipping around to go shopping and go to the restaurants and stuff like that.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are they where are they allowed to travel? Would they be using the bike lanes?
I believe the intent, is they would
I hate them.
be used the bike lanes.
The one guy, I almost ran over him because he wasn't obeying the traffic laws in Baltimore City.
Yeah,
Right.
Baltimore's had its issues with them. We certainly do.
What is it? Is it the birds?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean, that's sort of the same idea that they'd be starting to bring them in here. The company is Spin. It's Spin Scooters. So they had reached out to me directly because I'm the sort of the point of contact for the panel here, and then I started getting
traffic regulations for them because they totally disregard any traffic laws and they think they are invincible. One of these days they're gonna get run over by me.
Let's hope not, but but yeah, again, and we just wanted to make sure we were touching base with the panel as a whole to understand if there were any specific items related to the sort of the station pieces, the station aspects of them. Like I said, I think we were pretty covered in what our guidelines currently have and how we can manipulate them to fit. But we wanted to just make sure we were double checking.
I think there's a lot of other. I think there's a lot of other issues, and Vivian hit the nail on the head revolving around these things. I mean, I think they're in certain environments they make a lot of sense, but even in and for that matter, like an urban area like Baltimore City, but even in those environments, it's out of control. I mean, they'll literally leave them sitting in the middle of the sidewalk as opposed to where they're supposed to be. Or I can't tell you because my building is right downtown. A week goes by and I see them fishing 6 of them out of the harbor.
Yeah.
You know, so I wonder, are they going to end up in Lake Kittacum one day? And they're going to, you know, have to pull them out of the lakes in Columbia over the years. I don't know. But I think that probably your approach, Anthony, makes sense, right? Where there's bicycle racks and those sorts of things, that makes the most sense to have them reside in those locations. And then it's an experiment, it's a social experiment to some extent. But they're needed and necessary in certain environments for people to get around, so you don't have to get in their car. And a perfect example might be the lakefront there, as that develops over the next 20 years. You know, between Columbia, the mall, the lakefront, and
the Meriwether district,
yes,
connecting
yes.
that, yeah.
Right, right, Larry. All that area right there, you could definitely, I can see it. But I don't know about like in Ellicott City, where I live, or anywhere around here. Because I'm with Vivian, what are they gonna be doing? Cruising down Route 40? You know, there's no bike lane, and it's very dangerous then, and it's dangerous for the pedestrian or the biker or the scooter person. The person in the car is worried because, you know, they're going to get in an accident, they're going to get sued. It's just a litany of issues that in certain areas I don't think it makes sense, but we'll see.
Yeah, I believe the intent was, they were going to start down sort of in the Columbia area, and it's for that reason, you know, really to facilitate, you know, the you know, like an alternative to, you know, vehicular travel. If you're on that pedestrian scale, using that to sort of get around to the various, you know, areas.
Right.
And I know the scooter, you know, scooter folks. They're working with representatives, you know, I always say from the third floor, but the county executive's office, and they're working with Department of Transportation and stuff to work out sort of the guidelines and stuff that will, you know, govern, you know, how and where these, you know, these stations are located, and how these scooters are utilized throughout the county. So,
and technically, aren't they supposed to all be wearing helmets too?
I believe so.
I think it's part of their. I think it's their terms and conditions where they recommend that users wear them, but no one is policing that. Yeah.
Right. That's the point, right? And so someday, you know, you could just see all this litigation potentially, because, well, it says you're supposed to wear a helmet, but you decided not to wear a helmet, but a motorist hit you, and now you got hurt, and whose fault is that? And it's just,
needs to be ironed out.
I mean, I've seen people driving those things at like 40, got to be 30, 40 miles an hour. They're just zooming down the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing to worry about.
I guess if we think of anything else, we can all email it to you guys. And
hey, I have a question, just a follow-up question. That whole the Koreatown sign. So, did we ever get an answer on that? Was it just because Governor Hogan's wife? Is it that clout the political? I mean, I don't
suspected that's why Anthony never responded to my email, and that's what I thought, Vivian, because I was actually driving down Route 40 a week or two after I sent that email, and on the opposing side of Route 40, where the Boston Chicken is,
on both sides.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a sign there, and it was an early Saturday morning. And there was all kinds of state trooper cars there, and it appeared to me dignitaries were coming to dedicate that sign.
Okay.
And I'm suspecting what you just said might be the case, but I don't know.
So they basically trumped whatever regulations we have on Route 40.
Those signs are located in state rights of way,
and
there were no county permits that were needed to install them, and they did not trigger the they met any and all guidelines that we would have been able to apply to them.
I mean, I don't think they're any worse than anything else on that part of Route 40. honestly. But everybody's got their own opinions.
It's just kind of weird how two of them just appeared overnight
Yeah,
and
without
then
notice.
renamed the area to Koreatown. And I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I
And
know
I
it was
think,
Korea Way, but not Koreatown.
right. And those two shopping centers, there's a lot of Korean vendors in the stores, restaurants and stores. Yeah. So I kind of assumed that's
Decent
what it was.
judgment place over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the restaurants are good. I love all the restaurants.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do too.
I was just
We
curious.
needed some of that. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, guys, ladies. Thank you all. Have a good evening. What's left?
Yeah.
Officially adjourned.
Let's officially adjourn. Yes. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Guys, thank you.